Chapter 45-43. Time passed, and 3 days passed. For monks, 3 days is just a blink of an eye, but for today's virtual universe and divine universe, it is extremely slow. Although there are major top-level existences in the divine universe, and they went to battlefields outside the region to help the gods of the universe, but the gods of the universe did not choose to directly engage in a decisive battle with the virtual universe, but instead detoured backwards. The virtual universe is pressing harder and closer, compressing the living space of the gods, such as the gods. At this moment, in the extraterrestrial battlefield of the divine universe, the voids of the void universe have camped and completely occupied them. A tent in the middle of the camp, surrounded by endless black mist, the of innocence of physical appearance was sitting on a large chair. On his sides, there are left and right vanities, and under him are 34 vanities. They are negotiating the next battle plan. A vanity with countless tentacles walked in quickly from outside the camp, kneeling at the feet of the Sioux, and said in a deep voice, "Master Xian, the people of the divine universe still do not face us, but retreat with one blow and continue to shrink the line of defense." The virtual sat in the main seat and did not speak, but raised his head and narrowed his eyes, making it hard to understand what he was thinking. The right-hand messenger standing next to him was a thin-skinned old man wearing a shaman's hat. He heard the words softly and said, "Master Xian, there must be demon and abnormal things. This magical universe does not confront us, but instead it is constantly backing away. I'm afraid that there is any conspiracy." As soon as this word came to an end, other virtual respects also frowned and said, "Yes, Lord Shushan, this magical universe is obviously a strategy to seduce the enemy deeply. It is estimated that there is an ambush not far away." There was a lot of talk in the camp tent. Su Shen gave them a faint glance, full of magical sounds, from his mouth. "How about an ambush? What's the plan? It's just a matter of 10 minutes. After that, he shook his head and waved forward. "Come down, and now see the people in the divine universe no longer stay tempted and kill them directly. The people in the divine universe don't want to start a war with us. We will start a war with them. The initiative is never in their hands, but in our hands." The words were bland, but in the middle of the words, they were full of horror and domineering not to put anything in their eyes. "If you want 3,000 tricks and 100,000 calculations, I will try my best to drop 10 sessions. Strong crush, divine power within the universe." The house was full of false men, and they all took the keel boat and slowly evacuated. The Zhou stood on the deck of a keel boat, stood with his hands up, and looked up at the starry sky in the distance. There is a sense between the strong and the strong. He can sense that before the 100,000 virtual eras, the existence of the virtual universe was not far from him, looking at him from a distance. False god, his old enemy, Master Zeus, the people of the virtual universe, seem to notice that we are hanging them, and in the last few attacks, they no longer rush to kill. Captain of the 8th team, the Supreme Master Sisi, who breathed Sanqing into the universe with supernatural power, stood beside the of the universe and said softly. In his eyes, there was a rush of worry. Just as the virtual said, their magical universe has laid out countless killing arrays of extermination in the base camp tens of thousands of miles away from the battlefield outside the territory. Each of these killing arrays is not only powerful, but also the god used the list of combat power given to him by the sword, unparalleled. Each of them has a targeted restraint attribute. Once the people of the virtual universe enter, then what is waiting for them is a thunderstorm like a storm. Anyway, I understand the character of Shushan, who always advocates supremacy of strength and pushes invincibly. You can rest assured that he will not shrink back, but will increase the offensive. Zeus said with a smile, "For this old enemy, who has been entangled in 100,000 chaos ages. The of the universe has long been familiar with the virtual God, not to mention the countless killing battles are just a guise for the gods of the universe to attract their attention. The real killing trick is Jian Shuang's sword. As long as Jian Wushuang inserted the Feng Tianqi into the void and cut off the back of the void universe so that they could not get supplies, even if the countless killing battles did not work, he could slowly grind the alien dead. However, these plans did not tell anyone. Okay, I hope so. The 8th team captain, Shishi, took a deep breath and said, 3 days later, Master Zeus, as you expected, the virtual soldiers of the virtual universe launched a fierce attack. The 8th team captain, Sun Shi, hurried over and said with a look of excitement, in the case of countless killings, the current divine power universe is not afraid of the virtual universe being reckless. It is afraid of the virtual universe being careful. Now, the virtual universe has launched a fierce onslaught, and they are chasing after them, just hitting them. Okay, don't fight with them. Drag them into the battlefield. The god of the nod nodded, and then waved his hand to let Su Shi Supreme leave, and opened a communication with sword unparalleled. Refining Shinzong. The sword sat cross-legged and was practicing. Sword unparalleled. The words of the universe sounded in Jian Wushuang's mind. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, and there was a flash of magic in his eyes. Sir Master, are you planning to start? Yes, the sword is unparalleled. You can now rush to the void and set up the sky banner. Zeus nodded, then took a deep breath. His expression became serious. Sword unparalleled. This time your mission is very important. You can only succeed and not fail. It is good. Jian Wushuang nodded. A flash of firmness flashed in his eyes. Even if you die here, you will not regret it. At last. The of Zhou paused, his tone softened, and he said deeply, Jian Wushuang, after finishing this, come back alive. The old man is waiting for you in the universe. Jian Wushuang smiled at the words and said, Relax, I will come back alive. Later, Jian Wushuang hung up the communication with the of the universe. The Lord's dormitory became quiet. Jian Wushuang got up and stood up. His eyes were as plain as water, and he stepped out of the sovereign hall. Some cold wind blows Jian Wushuang's black hair. It's windy. Jian Wushuang looked up at the sky and murmured to himself. Next moment, the sword unparalleled stepped out, already outside the astral area where the refining Godzong was located. Standing in the starry sky, Jian Wushuang has put on a wide black robe. He glanced down at the refining Shinzong and realized in his heart that he would never come here again. Goodbye. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang reached out to pull on the wide hood that was attached to the black robe and pulled down the hood's brim to reveal only one chin. Huh! Swordless twins turned into a thunder, blasting towards the void. The recent plot is the biggest climax and the most important part of the Top of the Universe. It is related to the end of the Top of the Universe volume, so it takes more time and effort in order to achieve the best results, constantly scrutinizing the plot, resulting in late updates every day. I apologize to everyone. I will find time later to make up for it. Chapter 45-44. The vast universe of stars. A figure was bursting towards the void forbidden. Refining Shinzong is not far from the void forbidden ground, so it doesn't take long for Jian Wushuang to reach the void. When it came to the void, it was much tougher than the previous defense. There are traces of vanity everywhere, guarding the entrances. These levels of virtual respect are not high, and most of them are second and third marks. They were drawn by the elders of the top sects, and they were unable to participate in the Holocaust and were responsible for guarding the void. Who is coming? A scolding sound came, and a middle-aged man with a shining light in his eyes and a halo of avenues appeared on his back, staring at Jian Wushuang. "Sir, this is Luo Ming." Jian Wushuang smiled slightly, reached down, and pushed down the hood on his head, exposing a face exactly like Luo Ming. At the same time, a faint glow passed across the Ethereum token on his waist, making his breath impenetrable. Luo Ming. The middle-aged man sitting cross-legged, suppressing the entrance, raised his eyebrows. He had heard the name Luo Ming. It is the infamous red whale leader in the universe, who has always made a living by killing homes. Although his strength is not weak, his reputation in the universe is not good. He often does things that are deceptive and hardworking. In the eyes of this middle-aged man, Luo Ming is just a small character who can't get on the stage. What did this guy come here all of a sudden? Shaking his head, the middle-aged man's mouth appeared to be ridiculous, playing with taste. "Luo Ming, you are not staying with your red whale gang. Why come here? There are no people you can rob." Jian Wushuang heard the words and glared at him with a pretense of annoyance and snorted, "What are you talking about? Is this the only thing you can do that doesn't work?" "Ha ha ha, isn't it?" The middle-aged man grinned narrowly, and the taunt on his face was even stronger. "Well, Luo Ming, this is not where you should come. Wherever you come from, go back." He waved his hand, and the middle-aged man said impatiently that he wanted to send the sword Wushuang to leave. "Go away, what are you? This void is forbidden to open your house. If you let me go, just leave." Jian Wushuang glared at the middle-aged man and said something viciously. Long before entering the forbidden area of the void, Jian Wushuang had already figured out his plan, which was fake Luo Ming. This person, Luo Ming, has a good reputation in the virtual universe, but because of his status, he doesn't have many friends he really knows. In addition, Luo Ming's impression to the public is that the image of the unreliable Demon King, even if he did something extraordinary in the eyes of everyone, it is reasonable and consistent with his personality. These are the labels on Luo Ming. Therefore, this is the most suitable identity for Jian Wushuang to enter the void. As for the risk of breaking in too much, if not until the last moment, Jian Wushuang does not want to do so. "You guy, you really have a bad breath." The middle-aged man changed his face slightly when he heard the words, and there was a coldness in his eyes. "This seat lets you leave. This is not where you should come. Don't you understand?" While talking, the middle-aged man stood up while standing. The mighty coercion belonging to the four-level virtual respect emanated from him. Although he cultivates the same realm as Luo Ming, he is confident that he who is from the front door is definitely not the same as Luo Ming. If Luo Ming dare to say a word, he doesn't mind teaching the infamous red whale the big head. "What? You want to fight?" Jian Wushuang sneered and looked at the middle-aged man without fear. With the status of Luo Ming, Jian Wushuang has no worries about his seemingly insane performance, which will cause any doubt. "Court death." The middle-aged man flashed coldly in his eyes and said coldly, "Luo Ming, you usually do anything wrong, even if you don't cause a major event. Now dare to challenge this seat. Do you think this seat is your usual soft persimmon?" Wow! A black bone knife was pulled out of the body by a middle-aged man. A surge of imaginary force burst from him. Jian Wushuang looked at this scene. His pupils shrunk slightly, but his face did not change at all, stepped out, and stared directly at the middle-aged man. The eyes of the two men collided in the air, hitting countless invisible sparks. Pinpoint to Mei Mom. Just when the two were about to start, an unexpected voice suddenly came from a distance. "Luo Ming, why are you here?" Immediately afterwards, he saw an old man in a red robe. After seeing Jian Wushuang, he first looked at him, and then a happy expression came out on his face, and he quickly greeted him. "Ah, Lord Black Knife, Luo Ming, why are you two on the bar?" When the old man in the red robe approached, he saw that the atmosphere between Jian Wushuang and the middle-aged man was not right, and his heart suddenly made a bad noise. He and Luo Ming are best friends, and he knows Luo Ming's temperament best. I'm afraid it's my friend who caused something. With a bitter smile in his heart, the old man in the red robe immediately became a peacemaker. The middle-aged man obviously also knew the old man in the red robe. He snorted coldly, and his face was still not very good. Red Buddha, if you ask this person, shut your mouth and let the Sikh get out of the way. I don't kill him, it's already a good temper. Jian Wushuang heard the thoughts in his mind, and the old man in the red robe was afraid of being the real Luo Ming. He was one of the few friends in the universe. When the meeting still has to find a chance, ask Luo Ming to find out the situation of the old man in the red robe. Otherwise, it is very likely to reveal stuffing. There are many thoughts in his heart, but on the surface, Jian Wushuang stared at him, pretending to be angry. Red Buddha, this guy let me go away first. This guy is just a gatekeeper. If he is really a false gods, everyone is in the same realm. Why did he order me? Luo Ming, what is the gatekeeper? This seat is the last line of defense for Lord Shushan. You must not talk nonsense. The middle-aged man's anger came again. You really put gold on your face. Jian Wushuang disdain, sneered whispered. Between these two words, Jian Wushuang and this middle-aged man have another rhythm that they want to fight. Seeing this, the old man in the red robe only felt that the first two were big, and he couldn't help but stop the unstoppable Jian Wushuang and smiled bitterly. Well, give me a face, just a few words. The words fell, and the old man in the red robe saw that the two had slightly tempered their tempers and stopped, and he could not help but sigh of relief, then turned to look at Jian Wushuang and asked, Yes, Luo Ming, why did you come here suddenly? He remembered that Luo Ming did not know about the Holocaust. Chapter 45:45. Things of the Holocaust. In the divine universe, it is a secret that only spreads in the top combat power, and the same is true in the virtual universe. In theory, with Luo Ming's strength, he is qualified to know the Holocaust, but Luo Ming's popularity is too poor, and he has always been at odds with those top ancestors who know the news. Therefore, no one will naturally tell him. The old man in red robes knows this. Therefore, he was also quite surprised how Luo Ming knew about the Holocaust. In this regard, of course, Jian Wushuang's heart already has the answer. When I saw his eyebrows raised, he deliberately made a careless look and poked his lips and said, Why? Only you know, there are so many children in the Red Whale Gang, and I have already told this to him. The old man in the red robe heard the words and nodded bitterly with a smile. Although the Red Whale Gang are some shrimp soldiers and crabs, few of them can play a major role, but there are indeed many personnel. It is not difficult to inquire about a piece of news. Luo Ming, tens of millions of years have gone. You still speak with a gun and a stick. The old man in the red robe said with emotion. Before waiting for Wushuang's answer, the middle-aged man, Black Sword Lord, sneered and replied, What do you know? What do you want to do when you know it? Do you want to succeed or not to participate in the Holocaust? Jian Wushuang also replied with a sneer, It is not up to you to decide whether or not to participate in this catastrophe. This seat sees that you are a dog and a mouse, and you are nosy. You, His Majesty the Black Knife, heard the words, and immediately became extremely angry. When the old man in the red robe saw that they were in a position to quarrel again, he quickly said, Well, be quiet. Jian Wushuang and His Majesty the Black Knife stared at each other, then hummed at the same time and stopped talking. Taking a deep breath, the old man in the red robe said, Now, when I wait for the use of the virtual universe, Luo Ming's decision to participate in the Holocaust is not up to you or me. You are here a little wait. Let me first ask the 8 desolate lords who are responsible for guarding the camp this time. After that, The old man in the red robe took a look at them and strode into the void, forbidden area. After the old man in the red robe left, Jian Wushuang's mind relaxed slightly. Now that the acting is done, there is no need to go on. Just wait quietly for the result. Therefore, he closed his eyes slightly, eyes and noses and hearts, and turned a blind eye to the spitting fire of his holiness. The void in the forbidden area, the 87th crack, has been completely blocked. It's like a hive. Among the dense palaces, there is a side hall with a few oil lamps. Although the first main forces of the virtual universe have all followed the gods of the universe, they have broken into the magical universe. However, there is still a strong man who is responsible for suppressing the base camp in case of emergency. A middle-aged man in a white robe sat cross-legged on a futon and practiced quietly. Behind him, the endless corpse gas emerged automatically, forming a scene of corpses and blood. He is the 8th Desolate Emperor, the last sovereign of the refining god sect, and the one responsible for staying in the camp this time. Bada man. The old man in the red robe walked in quickly, and firstly whispered respectfully, "Don't look at the 8 Desolate worship, ranked lower than the 34 deity worship. That's because these 34 deity worship are all recovering from the ancient peak of the strong. But for those who do not enter the 6 marks, 8 Desolation still has great prestige." "Red Buddha, what's the matter?" Ba Huang Shuzuan slowly opened his eyes and looked at the old man in the red robe. His tone was kind. Although the old man in the red robe did not enter the 6 marks, in the realm of the 5 marks, he had been immersed in tens of thousands of virtual disciplines. As far as the practice time is concerned, it is far longer than the 8 Desolate respect. However, along the way, we don't use strength to determine strength and strength. Let's go back to the 8 Wastelands. Red Whale helps Luo Ming to vote and wants to play a part in this catastrophe. The old man in the red robe said with respect, "Luo Ming? But the star robber who is famous in the universe?" Ba Huang Shuzuang asked slightly, "Yes, this is the man. Lord Yao Huang. This Luo Ming has known me for hundreds of times. Although sometimes the mentality is bad, but the strength is not weak, and the nature is not bad." The old man in the red robe said, "Is that so?" Ya Huang Shuzuan touched his chin, then smiled and said, "The Red Buddha, you decide for yourself. Let him see where there are cracks to be guarded, then send him to guard." For Ba Huang Shuzuan, it is not a big deal to arrange a Luo Ming, and the old man in the red robe just said that he and Luo Ming were good, so let him give him a favor. Yes. The old man in the red robe was a little happy, and grateful Chao Xian honored his hand. In this hidden battle of the void universe, countless people have called it the Battle of Gods. Because once this battle is won, it will be rewarded by the Lord God. This is a rare opportunity. Luo Ming is one of his best friends, and the old man in the red robe naturally hopes that this friend can also share such an opportunity. After arching back, the old man in red robe returned to the void outside the forbidden area. "Luo Ming, come with me. Lord Badan has agreed to your request. It'll take you to familiarize yourself with the void forbidden area first, and then find a weak defense to get you on top." The old man in red robe said with a smile, "Ha ha ha, Red Buddha, how are you?" Jian Wushuang laughed loudly and didn't say any polite words, but reached out his hand and struck the old man in the red robe heavily. Although he did not know the real relationship between Luo Ming and the Red Buddha, the relationship would not be bad if he wanted to come. If he spoke some polite words, it would be abnormal. Gladly glancing at the scary middle-aged man with a dark face, Jian Wushuang followed the old man in the red robe and strode into the void. The villain Daji, the middle-aged man, snorted with a bitter hatred, and then sat down again, closed his eyes, and started practicing. No one found that Jian Wushuang, who was closely following the old man in the red robe, opened a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. A small black flag slipped from his cuff, inserted into the void, then disappeared and disappeared. Only Jian Wushuang can sense that all the nearby voids have been suppressed by Feng Tianqi. As long as Jian Wushuang's thoughts move, that Feng Tianqi can be fully urged to block everything and form a Jedi. Luo Ming, let me familiarize you with the Forbidden Land first, and tell you, by the way, what is the situation of this catastrophe. The old man in the red robe walked ahead and said, Jian Wushuang originally had this intention. At this moment, when he heard the old man in the red robe said this, his heart moved, and he nodded. It is good. Chapter 45-46. Time passes slowly. The old man in red robes, with sword unparalleled, began to become familiar with the void. Luo Ming, there are void cracks everywhere in the void space, and the magnetic field is chaotic. Our false consciousness often cannot be spread out completely, or it will convey some wrong information. Therefore, we need to measure by inch by foot and be familiar with the terrain. The old man in the red robe walked forward and said patiently. Jian Wushuang followed, not talking, but constantly looking at the void. As the sentence says, the paper is finally shallow. Although Jian Wushuang has a detailed map of the void forbidden area drawn by the Red Whale Gang, and is already familiar with it, it is still a little different from his own observation. As he walked, Jian Wushuang quietly laid the Fengtiansen banner. A few hours later, Void Forbidden Land had already traveled to most, and Feng Tianqi in the sword has no hands, and there is not much left. The entire Void Forbidden area is almost under his control. At this moment, the old man in the red robe stepped. Luo Ming, if you want to come to this catastrophe battle, you only know about it, but I don't know the details. Today, I will tell you about this catastrophe battle carefully. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes upon hearing the words, and to be honest, he didn't know much about the battle of catastrophe. He believes that the virtual universe is so continually moving forward and attacking the divine universe at the expense of casualties. In addition to the ambition of the virtual god, there must be important reasons that he does not know. Come on, don't sell. Jian Wushuang urged on his mouth, in line with Luo Ming's personality label. Luo Ming, do you know the existence of Qi Yun? The old man in red robe looked back and smiled at Jian Wushuang. Luck. Jian Wushuang heard the word for a moment, and he really heard it for the first time. Yes, luck. The old man in red robe nodded his head and replied, Luo Ming, you are still foremarked, and you don't have a deep understanding of luck. After you reach the level of 5 marks, you will find the importance of luck. After a pause, the old man in the red robe continued, in the universe, Wuchen level virtual respect is not uncommon. In general, as long as there is no death in the middle after breaking through the mark, after a long baptism, as long as the talent is not too weak, you can reach the 5-mark virtual status respect. However, the 5-marked virtual respect and the 6-marked virtual respect seem to be just a small realm, but the actual situation is completely different, and it is not an exaggeration to say that the nature of the gods. From ancient times to the present, our virtual universe does not know how many 5-mark virtual honors have been accumulated, but there are very few 6-mark virtual honors. If you want to break through the 6-mark virtual honor, you not only need top talent, understanding, but also the most critical factor, and that is luck. Every 6-marked vanity is said to be the son of heaven, and their own luck has been linked to this universe. Therefore, almost no one has ever been able to defeat the 6-marked virtual lords without entering the 6-marked virtual lords. The old man in the red robe flashed his eyes, and then sighed with a sigh of relief. The old man has been immersed in tens of thousands of virtual periods in the 5-mark virtual respect. According to the years of practice, many 6-mark virtual honors have to rank behind the old man. But as he practiced along the way, the masters always acted as teachers. The old man has practiced for so long, but he is not as good as them. He is really ashamed. Jian Wushuang heard the word and did not answer, but continued to think about the word fortune that the old man in the red robe just said. Not only does the 5-mark virtual honor of the virtual universe break through the 6-mark difficulty. In the divine universe, the half-step Invincible Supreme and the Invincible Supreme seem to be only 2 words apart, but they are also very different. There are not many top-level Supremes and half-step Invincible Extremes in the universe, but Invincible Extremes are few and poor. People such as Bloodwave Supreme, Giant Axe Supreme, etc., are all talented and superior in the universe, but there is a barrier after all to break through the Invincible Supreme. I'm afraid the word Qiyun is also missing. Luo Ming, the word Qi is important. It's not just that. For us, wanting to break from a 5-mark virtual honor to a 6-mark virtual honor, although it requires luck, but throughout the ages, it also has a person who can break through the realm, but the 6-marked vanity wants to take that vital step. Without luck, it is absolutely impossible. Which step does the 6-mark class have? Jian Wushuang heard a word of silence, and his eyes flashed instantly. If he didn't guess wrong, it should be the realm of the virtual or the cosmic god. If this is the case, then everything can be explained clearly why those ancient existences born of chaos with 6-marked vain respect. Why spare no effort to attack the divine universe? I'm afraid it's because the universe has limited luck. If you say that the fortunes of one universe are divided into 10 fights, and the virtual alone has already occupied 7 fights, then the only option for others to reach the level of virtual gods is to capture another universe. At that step, what is it called? Jian Wushuang asked. This is not what I have access to. The specific situation can only be understood after breaking through to a 6-mark virtual honor. The old man in the red robe shook his head and said, "Let's go. They'll take you to your guard first." "It is good." Jian Wushuang nodded and no longer asked. After an hour, a huge basin appeared before the sword without double sides. The old man in red robe said, "Luo Ming, you are responsible for guarding here." After a pause, the old man in the red robe patted Jian Wushuang's shoulders and said with a smile, "Generally speaking, nothing major will happen. You just need to be here and wait for Lord Shushan to return triumphantly." A few more words were ordered, and the old man in the red robe left. Jian Wushuang looked around, sitting cross-legged. A Fengtian flag slid from his sleeve, inserted into the void, and then disappeared. Open. With a light sip among the dark golden eyes of Jian Wushuang, countless road flashes. An invisible map emerged in his eyes. This map is truly a void in the void. I saw that Feng Tianqi was almost full in the void, and with only a single move of Jian Wushuang's mind, he could instantly start the formation and block the void. It's still the last place. This big battle is complete. Jian Wu's eyes looked at the 87th crack, whispered to himself. It is necessary to hurry up and insert the 87th crack in Fengtian banner. The next day, Jian Wushuang stood up, seemingly bored with the boring, sitting and guarding his work, and swaggered towards the surrounding. In this regard, many defenders were suspicious at first, but when they knew it was Luo Ming, they suddenly hummed and said nothing. In their opinion, Luo Ming is a soiled bun that does not understand the rules, and it is normal to do so. After wandering around for a while, Jian Wushuang saw the time was ripe and immediately walked towards the 87th crack. 3 sides of the sky banner quietly appeared in his hands. Chapter 45-47. Inside the void, in an attic, the old man in red robe was holding the railing with both hands, listening to the return from his subordinates. Luo Ming could not help crying and laughing and shook his head. My old friend, when I am really out of temper, I will, knowing that he would not be so peaceful. It really took a day or two to sit still. After a pause, the old man in the red robe turned his head and asked, "Where is Luo Ming now?" "Master Red Buddha, Luo Ming should now go to the 87th crack." His Majesty said with an arched hand. "Okay." The old man in Tung Hongpo nodded his head and then groaned for a while and said, "This is no better than other places. I'll go and see him. Don't cause any trouble." The words of the symbols fell, and the old man in the red robe stepped on his feet and walked towards the 87th crack. The 87th crack, the guard is more severe than other places. Far apart, Jian Wushuang saw a huge building like a honeycomb hovering quietly in the air. Behind this building, a crack about the size of 10 feet was constantly twisted. This crack is the 87th crack that connects the virtual universe and the divine universe. This is also the most critical place to block the void and to break the advanced forces in the divine universe. Therefore, no two sides of the sword have to insert 3 Fengtian flags here. Noisy, the first seal of the sky banner, slipped from the sword without hands, overcast in the void. Immediately, the sword Wushuang swayed towards the 87th crack. "Stop coming." Before I approached, I saw 2 weird men with long necks wearing weird robes blocking Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang glanced at them, scratched his head, and grinned. "Hey, 2 brothers, I was recently responsible for guarding the void and letting me in." The 2 long-necked weirds glanced at each other, and then frowned and said, "You must not be ordered to call here. You must not enter here." Wu Jianshuang heard that his pupils shrank slightly. That 8 is the person responsible for staying in the void forbidden land, and 8 desolate respect. The thoughts in Wu Jianshuang's heart turned sharply, but on the surface he murmured, "Would you like to inform the 8 wastelands?" The 2 long-necked weirds said, "Master Yahuang is talking to Lord Shushan and will not accept the announcement. You quickly return to your hometown." "Is that so?" Jian Wushuang bowed his head. "He just talked to the of the universe just now." The of the universe informed him that the war between the divine universe and the virtual universe had broken out, and it was imperative that they would be delayed after breaking them. "It seems that you can only use strong." Wu Jianso silently whispered to himself. Next moment, Wu Jianwu stepped forward without waiting for the 2 long-necked monsters in charge of the guard to return. The whole person has turned into a streamer and rushed towards the 87th crack. Bold, presumptuous, the 2 long-necked weirds returned to their hearts and suddenly became furious, running weak, and chasing towards the sword unparalleled. Don't look at these 2 long-necked weirdos. They are just responsible for guarding, but at the moment, it is also an Urshian Shuzuan under the repair of an outbreak. I saw that their necks, like rubber, suddenly stretched and turned into pythons. "Go away." Jian's eyes flashed, and he reached out with both hands, grabbing the necks of the 2 long-necked monsters. Holding in his hands, countless storms surged. I saw Jian Man's eyes twinkling in his eyes, and he stirred his hands to tie the 2 long-necked monsters' rubber-like necks to a knot, and then slapped them with a slap. "Come here." Someone breaks through the crack. Suddenly, the 2 long-necked weirds roared loudly, and a harsh sirens rang out throughout the void, and Sword Unparalleled has stepped in front of the void crack. The thrilling wind came out from the fissure of the 87th, revealing the familiar breath of Jian Wushuang. The last 2 Fengtian flags slipped from the sword without hands and inserted into the void crack. In a short time, all the closed heavens sensed each other, and they were completely integrated into one, and the void forbidden dungeon was suppressed and blocked. Immediately, Jian Wushuang opened a message with the of the universe. "Master God, Feng Tianqi has all been installed. You can start the formation at any time. Longer from the 87th crack, the old man in the red robe was stepping forward. Before he could reach the 87th crack, a sharp alarm sounded, and it blew loudly in the sky. What's the situation? The old man in Tang Hongpo changed his face and instantly thought of the incident when Luo Xing reported to him that Luo Ming had gone to the 87th crack. Suddenly, his eyelids jumped, and a bad premonition filled his heart. Isn't it something Luo Ming did? Boom! Suddenly, the old man in the red robe stepped a little faster. Hive Palace Group. Su Bahuang Xuanzang is communicating with Xushen. Suddenly, a sharp alarm sounded. Okay. He Bahuang Zhuang frowned, pleaded guilty to Xushen, cut off the communication, and immediately opened up. Come here, what happened outside? A subordinate hurried in, kneeling and saying, Bottom man, someone broke into the 87th crack. What? The face of Su Bahuang Zun's face changed, and his expression suddenly became gloomy. He asked coldly, Who stormed the 87th crack? Let's go back to the 8 wastelands. It's Luo Ming of the Red Whale Gang. Luo Ming? He is so brave. He Bahuang Suzong snorted coldly, then strode out of the camp and walked towards the crack. The 87th crack door. Sword unparalleled. Start Feng Tianqi immediately. Wu Zhoushan said in a deep voice. Yes. Wu Jianwushuang nodded, took a deep breath. 99 Feng Tian banner evolved in his eyes. Kai. The next moment, Jian Wushuang spit out a word softly. Rumble. The heavens and earth changed. In an instant, countless gale winds roared, and the whole void was forbidden, making a roaring muffled sound, like an earthquake, and the earth began to shake violently. Countless dusts have risen, and slap cracks have spread. Snapped. A flash of lightning, like a thunderbolt blasted on a sunny day. The entire void in the void was quickly evacuated by an invisible force. Countless black chains emerged out of thin air, closing the boundless land. What happened? The old man in red robe and the 8 desolate emperor, who had just arrived in front of the fissure, had changed their faces. Looking up at the fissure in the void, his sword was calm and unparalleled. Luo Ming, what have you done? Stop it. Are you looking for death? The old man in the red robe looked at Jian Wushuang and was shocked and angry. At the same time, a sense of anxiety erupted in his heart. I do not know why. He looked at Jian Wushuang with a calm face and suddenly felt an extremely strange feeling. Latest URL. Chapter 45-48. Huh. When the old man in the red robe was so anxious and yelled at him, the 8 desolate emperor had turned into a streamer and quickly grabbed at the sword unparalleled. Wu Jianshou looked back at the two and gave a sneer at the corners of his mouth. He did not sneer with the two, but at the moment when the Fengtian formation started, the whole person stepped into the void crack. Dead. He Bahuang Suzun grabbed his right hand severely, but what he caught was just an afterimage. Suddenly, Ba Huangsun's face was ugly. Old man in red robe rushed to the side at this time. His expression was shocked and angry. He had thought that relying on Luo Ming's temperament would inevitably cause some wrongs, but he did not expect that he would make such a terrible disaster. I looked at the expression of Tai Ching from Bahuang Suzun, and the old man in red robe said with guilt, I'm sorry, but I don't know Luo Ming would do such a thing. He didn't wait for him to finish, and saw Ba Huangshuan looked at him coldly, and said, Red Buddha, you can't see yet. Isn't this person Luo Ming? What? The old man in Tang Hongpo was shocked, and then thought back carefully. At first thought, he suddenly thought of countless clues. When he took Jian Wushuang to visit the void, he talked with Jian Wushuang several times, and the funny thing between them, but he was inadvertently obscured by Jian Wushuang. I didn't think about it in the first place. He hadn't found anything yet. Looking back at the moment, I couldn't help but think, isn't this the exposed flaw of this person, afraid to be seen by himself? Who is this person? The old man in the red robe asked with a heartbeat. It is not important who he is now. Red Buddha, this person is a void, forbidden area brought by you, and you will wait for Lord Shushan to return for accountability. Huang Suzun snorted coldly. If in the past, relying on the seniority of the old man in the red robe, he is quite polite, but in these major events, the eight desolate respect will naturally not be as usual. At the same time, he could not help thinking of the black robe man who had stepped into the void crack from the divine universe and entered the void universe. From the divine universe, Huang Suzun narrowed his eyes and murmured to himself. Immediately, Huang Suzun no longer thought about it, but planned to connect with Shushan to report the situation. However, as soon as he was about to send a message to Su Shen, his face changed suddenly. He actually found out that the line of communication between him and Shushan was like being cut by an invisible scissors, and he could not communicate with Shushan at all. Something is coming. Yao Wang's heart sank. Since the communication could not be communicated, he tried to step into the void of the void, enter the magical universe, and talk to the virtual in person. However, taking this step made his heart completely cold. I saw that before the 87th crack, there seemed to be an invisible barrier, which completely blocked the way to the divine universe. The passage between the two universes is sealed. What does this mean? 8 wastelanders know that since they can't go by, then the virtual gods and others in the divine power universe can't come back naturally. This makes Huang Xuanzhuang like a falling ice cellar, chilling all over. Red Buddha, you should confess your death. Huang Suzun turned his head, staring at the old man in red robes, squeezing out the words from his teeth. Extraterrestrial battlefield. Jian's unparalleled body constantly condenses from transparency to substance, and finally reveals his figure completely. Who? Qi Jian Wushuang breathed out a sigh of relief, and with the successful launch of Fengtian formation, the heavy stone that had been pressed on his heart finally fell completely. I glanced around, and it was originally an extraterrestrial battlefield that was heavily occupied by soldiers. At this moment, there was only an empty space, leaving only a wave of battle between Supreme and Void, and countless broken limbs. I bang, bang, bang. There was a sound of collision, roar coming from a long distance ahead. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked forward, and the dark golden eyes suddenly burst into countless bloodshots. His eyes directly penetrated through the void of tens of thousands of miles, and saw the two-party universe that was really at war in the base of divine universe. It's my turn. Wu Jianshou twisted his neck, and his eyes shot with turbulent warfare, like a fire burning. There was a strong desire to fight, surging in his chest. Next moment, with his right foot stepped, Jian Wu turned directly into a thunder, blasting quickly towards the battlefield. Divine Power Universe Base Camp. The men and women on both sides of the universe are here, and finally a real war breaks out. Countless killing battles have begun, strangling 34 Xianzun and 2 left and right envoys under the seat of the Colossus, as well as more 4-mark, 5-mark sun, and so on. Irai Lake rises to the bright moon. The immortal king comes to the 9th day, the 9-star Rinju line. One vision after another emerged in this starry sky. When the two universes fought, they went directly to the hottest time. The shouting sounds were loud, and countless spells collided together. Each spell had the power to destroy the stars and cut off the galaxy. In terms of overall advantages, although the divine universe has the blessing of battling the battlefield, it still cannot beat the virtual universe. The fighting on both sides is in a tit-for-tat form. I will not mention the battle between the 9 team members under the cosmic throne and the 6-marked virtual respect brought by the virtual god. The scenes of the battle between Invincible Supreme and 6-mark Void are really terrifying and terrifying. As early as the beginning of the battle, the 2 gods Su Sun and Zhou God split the space and went straight into another dimension duel. Therefore, what really shocks people and plays a decisive role on the battlefield is the battle of 6-marked Vanity and Invincible Supremacy, awakening from the Manjiang Glacier, the power of the flesh overwhelming the ancestral patriarch White Ape, right against the Right Ambassador, one of the strongest combat forces under the virtual seat www.novel. Kam Shinzong has a one-sided, white-haired, burly old man. I saw the tyrant's ancestor punching out, as if pushing around a fierce sun, sending out magnificent golden light, blasting the void into the air, drawing numerous air away, and smashing on the right virtual body. Suddenly, that right-handed messenger also erupted an unbelievable level of terror. I saw the 2 thunderballs in his hands directly exploded and turned into a sea of thousands of miles, like the ancient thunder who ruled the rule of thunder in the world. The thunderous thunder smashed down one after another, facing the hegemon of the hegemon. Torrential blast. Each of these thunders is enough to kill half-step Invincible Supreme. At this moment, millions of such powerful thunderbolts are bombarded on the Patriarch's ancestors, and their power can hardly be described. The same man who once also extinct the ancient times and then concealed the playful world laughed and asked the big dream of 3,000 years old and the age of the wine lunatic Laukir, who was fighting with Swoosh Yusher. He saw that the lid of the wine gourd in the hands of the wine lunatic was torn open by him, and a stream of chaotic water was pouring out like a river, flooding the mantis-like left emptiness. Chapter 45-49. Weak and weak. Weak and weak. Too weak. It seems that you haven't made progress in these 100,000 chaos periods. The ancestors of the tyrants robbed minds, shook the electric light hard, and each punch was enough to explode hundreds of suns. The force was sinking to the extreme and the domineering to the extreme. 3,000 and 6,000 drunks with the air of sorrow. As a drunken man like an old beggar, he directly turned a galaxy into a field of sunflower water, and the sound of waves crashed. Fights like this are constantly happening in the stars. Whether it is the Invincible Supreme of the Divine Universe or the 6-marked Virtual Supreme of the Void Universe, each of them is the pinnacle of the era that has dominated the era. At this moment, these ancient powers are all awake from their deep sleep, and they can be described as extremely powerful. Someone pointed at the starburst, someone broke the galaxy, and others incarnate billions of feet, swallowing thousands of miles of starry sky. In the aftermath of the encounter between them, as if there were countless big worlds destroyed, chaos would boil and restart, and heaven and earth would break apart. He said it was extinct. The strong men of the 3 dragons, and phoenixes also showed their ability to dominate the universe. An 8-clawed evil dragon directly swallowed a group of bright galaxies, turned it into the purest energy, and shot out a breath of destruction. With a colorful phoenix, Qingming rose into the sky behind him, burning countless avenues of magical fire around his body, turning millions of stars into a raging sea of fire, directly cracking the void and burning. A 5-marked virtual honor fell into this endless flame of fire, and it disappeared without any residue. The tribe of Kirin is even more horrible. A 3-headed unicorn, at each step, stamps out a flame mark in the void, exuding the power of an endless king, and can't help but bow his head and worship. The opponents of the 3 of them are from Tianyao Holy Land, the 1st and 2nd ancestors of Tianyao, who have slept from ancient times to the present, and an old monster that is not weaker than them. In the face of these 3 people, the strong players of the 3 dragon and phoenix unicorns did not have a half-point victory. So it comes. divine power, universe Wu Jianxian, the first person of kendo in the world, under one sword, overturned millions of stars and rivers, staring at the sky. Hanman flickered in her eyes. Although she was a woman, she was not inferior to anyone in the audience. Sometimes she opened the gate to the sky, and sometimes she rushed to the sky. Her strength has already unknowingly reached the level of Tai Luo Supreme, perhaps not reached. There are also several major captain-level figures, such as Taishu Emperor, Zero Wood Supreme, Lucy Supreme, and Heiyuan Supreme, etc., which also burst into an extremely bright light. This kind of battle is simply unprecedented. In this kind of battle, who dares to call invincible, which dare to say undefeated? A name is invincible and supreme, with 6 marks of virtual respect, each showing his magical power, shocking the world. For a while, they could even kill them. After all, at their level, in fact, they were not too much in terms of combat power. Each had its own killer at the bottom of the box, which was difficult to separate in a short time. Winning and losing. The battle between some ordinary trace-level virtual lords and supreme lords is much more intense. A name placed in the universe can be regarded as the scary Vayne and supreme lord of the big man. In this battle, it can be said that the ant's cannon fodder is not exaggerated. From time to time, the supreme strong person falls down and wails. The casualties between them are almost straight up. The worst thing is that the situation between these ordinary supreme and virtual lords has begun to tilt towards the virtual universe. All this comes from a monster with a dog head and a huge axe. He was wearing a broken suit of molten armor, surrounded by faint blue light. No pupils in his eyes, only a blue staring at his eyes as if staring into the abyss. The 5 long marks on the left shoulder where he was not covered by the slurry, so that he was barely exposed, were dazzling to the extreme. In the battlefield, he is simply a war machine of death returned from hell. No one can stop. I saw that he was holding a giant axe like a pharaoh's scepter in both hands, and the blue light around him formed a halo, which was severely knocked down. It was a half-step invincible supremacy of the divine universe. What's even more weird is that after the half-step invincible supreme was beheaded by the monster with this doghead's body, it turned into a long string of blood beads, which was automatically dropped into the monster's mouth and swallowed by him. And this dog-headed human monster had a slight injury, but he recovered instantly, and his body skyrocketed. I'm afraid that when he kills some more people, he can reach the level of threatening invincibility. We can say that this dog-headed monster has affected the whole battle. Not only has his injury recovered, but his strength has increased by 1 point. What kind of monster is this? The dragon scales turned out all over, and the wolf reached the extreme Longqing. He looked at the dog-headed monster with a look of horror. There was no more majesty in his eyes, but he was terrified to the extreme. He is half-step invincible and supreme, and he can be regarded as a strong person in this realm. He would not be directly slashed by an axe, but it is not much better. He was directly slashed by this dog-headed monster, and the horn was cut off. In one section, the entire body has a huge and deep wound. He was far away, and Zhu Jiawang's face was also gloomy to the extreme. He is not an opponent of this dog-head monster. If he is in the same realm with this dog-headed monster, he is confident that he can defeat this beast-headed monster, even beheaded. However, his cultivation status is too low, and he is still a distance from the Supreme. Go on like this, the ordinary Supreme in the entire universe will be beheaded and killed by this person, and will become a nourishment to increase his strength. At that time, once this person grows up, the invincible Supreme, and the 6-mark Vignity, the short-term balance maintained between them, will also be broken. At that time, it is very likely that all games will be lost. What to do now? How to deal with him? Who can be his opponent? At this moment, the arrogant king of Jokai, who is always arrogant, and arrogant also feels bitter in his mouth and despair in his heart. Junks from the divine universe, quickly submit to my fucking. The monster walking the head of the dog laughed wildly and looked at the eyes of King Jujia and Long Qing full of contempt and disdain. Is this the strength of the divine universe? It is really scary to be weak. The dog-headed monster shook his head and immediately put out his tongue and licked his lips, showing greed and cruelty in his eyes. As long as all the people on the other side are beheaded and turned into their own nourishment, if they want to come, they will be enough to break through to the 6 marks level, right? Thinking of this, the dog-headed monster chuckled, holding a giant axe, and walked towards the ordinary supreme in the divine universe again. He raised his huge axe high, ready to split. Beneath his giant axe, several high-ranking, top-ranking supreme, despairing, ashamed. I haven't waited for him to chop. Ding! A dazzling sword light, as if Tianhe rolled down and swept across the sky, suddenly came from far away across thousands of miles. Chapter 45-50. Okay? Holding a giant axe, the dog-headed monster that was about to be slashed, feeling the icy sword that locked him and sprinting at him quickly, could not help but stagnate his hands, and slowly looked back. Suddenly, the dog-headed monster whispered, and his pupils could not help shrinking. At the same time, Long Qing and King Nine Calamities, including many people who are fighting, all stopped in their hands and looked up at the bright sword light that struck the sky and split the yin and yang. This is Sword Warriors. Jian Wushuang is back. Suddenly, countless people in the divine universe were shaken, all exclaimed. During the 5,000-year battle of Jian Wushuang in the sword, he has already conquered countless people with his own strength and gained great fame. Boom! In a blink of an eye, this sword light rushed to the ground, fiercely chopping on the monster with a dog head. Weak trash! When the dog-headed monster saw this, he was not afraid to laugh, and the long axe in his hand swept away, and he collided with the Taro Excalibur in the swordless hands. Ding! A sharp, extremely explosive sound exploded, and then a huge shock wave spread out in a fan shape from the encounter between the two, and its mixed terrorist power directly shattered countless voids, setting off a cloud of smoke. Rewind. The numerous monks and fictitious monks who were fighting all around changed their looks and quickly retreated. Immediately afterwards, everyone saw that the monster with a huge dog head, who called himself Hell King, was like being hit by a heavy hammer. The whole person crossed a line of arcs and shot backwards from the sky. With his legs in, there were 2 long marks in the void. Gradually, smoke and dust gradually spread, revealing a figure of a young man in black. This young man with black hair has a cold and indifferent face. Among the pair of pale golden pupils, there is no emotion, and the purple Chuan word is bright and charming. Hold the 5 knuckle fingers in his hand, and hold the Taro Excalibur. The strong sword pressure forms the substance, spreading around him as the center, and arrogant in all directions. Sure enough, it is the sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang, this guy is stronger. Medium Supreme. Jian Wushuang even broke through the Medium Supreme, a fast practice speed. Suddenly, countless people shrank their pupils. They can feel that Jian Wushuang is more powerful than before, not only the strength of cultivation, but also the feeling leaked out by the whole person. The current sword is unparalleled, just like the peerless sacred sword that tore for 9 days, with a look full of great coercion, which makes people dare not look straight. Wu Jian's eyes were indifferent. Looking around, he immediately saw countless familiar faces. King of the 9 Kings, Overlord Morwa Yengu, Long Qing. Too many people who have been entangled with him at this moment are all wounded and extremely miserable. I am back. Su took a deep breath and Jian Wu's eyes shot intently. This battlefield is where he should stay. Immediately afterwards, Jian Wushuang bowed his head slightly and looked towards the fucking. I saw that although the fucking was split and flew by the sword Wushuangjiai sword, the whole Bodhi's breath was not attenuated. The deep visible bone, sword cut on his chest, was regrown at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a few breaths, it resumed as before. Weak trash, do you know that you are provoking a great being? Hell King smiled and spoke. A more terrifying breath came out of him. I felt this breath, and everyone around me changed his face, like a fucking with a dog head turned into an abyss of death. Noise. Wu Jian glanced at him with no expression on both sides, and then the whole person turned into dawning golden light and killed the fucking again. Henin's sword intentions poured out from Jian Wushuang's hands. In an instant, Jian Wushuang disappeared, and Tai Luo's Excalibur also disappeared. Among the heavens and the earth, there is only the breaking dawn sword that breaks all darkness and brings dawn to earth. He is overbearing, fierce, and sharp, and cannot use any words to describe this horrible sword. With this sword, Amami is at an extreme. Life is part of the cycle, and your part is over. Death strike. The fucking roared, the endless blue ons, all condensed on the axe of his axe, fiercely chopped at the sword Wushuang. This blow is much stronger than before. It can be said that it has stood at the peak of the invincible supreme. Boom. Under the clash of the two, the world suddenly shook, as if there were countless big worlds falling apart. A larger shock wave spread instantly, enough to annihilate 100 stars in an instant. The two cosmic people who were fighting around him relapsed again. A 3-mark vanity, whose speed was only 1 step slower, was hanged by the sword of Wushuang in hell and became smashed into powder. Qi Jian Wushuang's right hand holding the sword, the tiger's mouth trembled. The power of this axe was enough to blast the sun. Rao is a chaotic, domineering body, and then felt a little hard. But this is not the most critical. The most important thing is that the axe of Hell King seems to have the power of devouring. At the moment of the fight, he wants to devour the sword's vitality. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang is a super-perfect chaotic life. With only a slight movement of divine power, this swallowing power is suppressed. Oh, actually blocked it? It seems you are better than those ants. Hell's eyes narrowed, and a slight surprise appeared on his face. But the next moment, there was a smirk in his lips. However, in front of me, it is just a slightly stronger and cannot change your weak nature. Death strike. Countless blue ons once again gathered on the axe blade of the axe in the fucking's hand, chopping fiercely towards the sword, unparalleled. You are too slow. Jian Wushuang sneered, directly urging dragon blood mystery, and the speed soared tenfold in a sudden. After just a flash, he appeared behind the Hell King, and the Terra sword in his hand exploded, tilting towards the head of the Hell King. Leaving. Open the sky. Annoying rubbish, can it only sneak attack? The fucking frowned, and speed was indeed his weakness. Alas, he also has a solution. He first raised the long axe in his hand to block the sword, and then stepped forward to distance himself from the sword. Finally, he raised his right hand, aimed at Jian Wushuang, and said, "Imagination withering rhythm." The words of the symbol fell, and innumerable blue lights burst out in the void, densely converging towards his palm, forming a blue vortex. The next moment, these blue lights burst out from his palm and penetrated into Jian Wushuang's body. In a short time, the speed of Jian Wushuang became slow, and the breath of the whole body began to fall and decay like the flowers and bones in the autumn wind, and gradually withered. Chapter 45:51. The outbreak of a battle bang. Bang! Just as the red-robed elder was about to scold Jian Wushuang, Void Master Ba Huang had already turned into a streak of flowing light and reached out to grab Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang looked back at the two of them and sneered. He did not waste time talking to them. The moment the Fengtian formation was activated, he stepped into the crack in the void. Die! Void Master Ba Huang's right hand reached out, but what he caught was only an afterimage. Instantly, Void Master Ba Huang's face turned extremely ugly. The red-robed old man rushed to the side, his expression shocked and angry. He had thought that with Luo Ming's temperament, he would definitely cause some trouble, but he did not expect that he would cause such a great disaster. Looking at the ashen expression of Void Master Ba Huang, the red-robed elder said guiltily, "Void Master Ba Huang, I'm sorry. I didn't know Luo Ming would do such a thing." Before he could finish, Void Master Ba Huang looked at him coldly and said, "Hong Fo, can't you tell that this man is not Luo Ming?" "What?" The red-robed old man was startled upon hearing this, and he immediately began to carefully recall. As he thought about it, he immediately thought of countless clues. When he showed Jian Wushuang around the void forbidden land, he talked to Jian Wushuang several times about the interesting things that happened between them, but Jian Wushuang brushed him off with vague words. At first, he did not think in this direction, so he did not notice anything. Now that he thought about it, he could not help but think that person must be afraid that he would be exposed. "Then who is this person?" The red-robed old man's heart skipped a beat as he asked. "Humph, it doesn't matter who he is now. Hong Fo, you were the one who brought this person into the Void Forbidden Land. Just wait for Lord Void God to come back and question you." Void Master Ba Huang snorted. In the past, given the red-robed elder's years of cultivation experience, he would still be rather polite. However, on such a major event, Void Master Ba Huang would naturally not act as usual. At the same time, he could not help but think of the image of the sky spider old monster. He had seen the black-robed man step into the crack in the void from the Divine Power universe and enter the Void universe. From the Divine Power universe. Void Master Ba Huang squinted his eyes and muttered to himself. Immediately, Void Master Ba Huang stopped thinking and planned to contact Void God to inform him of the situation. However, just as he was about to send a message to Void God, his expression changed drastically. He realized that the communication line between him and Void God seemed to have been cut off by an invisible pair of scissors. He could not communicate with Void God at all. Something big is going to happen. Void Master Ba Huang's heart sank. Since he could not communicate with Void God, he tried to step into the crack in the void and enter the Divine Power universe to talk to Void God face to face. However, the moment he took that step, his heart turned cold. There seemed to be an invisible barrier in front of the 87th crack, which completely blocked the path to the Divine Power universe. The channel between the two universes had been sealed. Void Master Ba Huang understood what this meant. Since he could not go over, Void God and the others in the Divine Power universe would naturally not be able to return. This made Ba Huang feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar, and his body shivered. "Hong Fo, you should atone for your sins with your death." Void Master Ba Huang turned around and stared at the red-robed elder. Off-world battlefield. Jian Wushuang's body turned from transparent to solid, and finally he was completely revealed. Phew! Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief. With the successful activation of the Fengtian formation, the heavy stone that had been weighing on his heart was finally lifted. He looked around and saw that the off-world battlefield, which was originally an important place for militarists, was now empty. Only the shock waves from the battle between the supreme martial artists and the Void Masters and countless broken limbs were left. Boom, boom, boom. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes and looked forward. His dark golden eyes were bloodshot. His eyes pierced through thousands of miles of void space and saw the base camp of the divine power universe, where the two universes were fighting. "It's my turn." Jian Wushuang twisted his neck, and his eyes were burning with fighting intent. A strong desire to fight surged in his chest. Bang! The next moment, Jian Wushuang stomped his right foot and turned into a thunderbolt, shooting toward the battlefield. In the base camp of the divine power universe, the people from both universes finally started a real war here, clashing with their weapons. Countless killing formations were activated, killing the 34 Void Masters and the 2 Void Emissaries under Cosmic God, as well as the other Void Masters with 4 and 5 scars. The moon rose from the sea, the celestial king descended from the 9 heavens, and the 9 stars were connected, one after another. Strange phenomena appeared in the starry sky. The moment the two universes clashed, it was the time when they were at their most white and hot. The sound of killing filled the sky as countless spells collided. Each of them had the power to destroy stars and cut the Milky Way. In terms of overall advantage, although the divine power universe had the support of the killing formation, it still could not win against the void universe. The battle between the two sides was in a tit-for-tat situation, not to mention the 9 teams under the command of Cosmos God, and the battle between the Void Masters under the 6th Scar level brought by Void God. The scene of the fight between the Invincible Supremes and the 6th Scar Void Masters was extremely terrifying. The moment the battle started, Void God and Cosmos God had already split open space and entered another dimension to fight. Therefore, what really shocked people and played a decisive role on the battlefield was the battle between a 6th Scar Void Master and an Invincible Supreme. The Overlord Patriarch, White Ape, who had awakened from the glacier and unparalleled physical strength, was fighting against one of the strongest fighting powers under Void God, the Right Void Emissary, who was also the white-haired, burly old man that Jian Wushuang had met once in the God refining sect. They watched as Overlord Patriarch punched out. It was as if he was pushing a blazing sun. It emitted a golden light that caused the void to explode. Countless air was drawn out and smashed onto the body of the Right Void Emissary. As for the Emissary, he had also exploded with unbelievable and terrifying strength. The 2 thunderballs in his hands exploded and turned into a sea of thunder. It was as if the ancient thunder god, who controlled the thunder laws of the world, had descended to the world. Terrifying thunderbolts came crashing down one after another toward Overlord Patriarch like a violent storm. Every single bolt of lightning was more than enough to annihilate a half-invincible Supreme. At this moment, millions of tribulation lightning bolts of this level of power struck the body of the Overlord Patriarch. The power of this was simply indescribable. The crazy alcoholic old beggar, who had also dominated the ancient era and later hid in the mortal world, was fighting with the left Void Emissary. The crazy alcoholic pulled open the lid of the wine gourd, and a stream of primal chaos sunflower water gushed out like a river, submerging the left Void Emissary, who looked like a mantis. Chapter 45:52. Boom! Instantly, all 3 forces fell on the fucking. The hell-bodied body of the fucking was suddenly soaring with blood. Thousands of swords smashed his thin bones like a blood rain. The 2 cosmic people around me looked at this scene. Their hearts were shocked to the extreme. Medium Supreme, such a mighty outbreak. It has never been done before. Too strong. Scalp. This sword of Wushuang is horrible to burst. Countless people marveled. And sword unparalleled. With the eyes indifferent, the body gradually rises to the sky. Taro sword code, 4th style for seasons. Winter to spring, spring to summer. The chanting voice dropped. Behind Jian Wushuang, a huge round of flaming sun emerged. The area of this big sun is larger than the ordinary 10 suns. The hot high temperature is burning all this, and a piece of red light that maps the universe is burning the blazing flame on the surface of the big sun, as if it were 10 the sun was a big fireball, horrifying beyond description. Next moment, burning. Wu Jianqi's hands quickly stamped, pressing down towards Hell King. Instantly, this huge fireball rolled down towards the fucking of the dog head. In the void, there was a roar. Hell King looked up at this scene, and finally couldn't keep his face calm anymore, but roared out, "Break me, incarnation of death." As soon as I said this, I saw that something terrifying to many people had happened. Countless blue flames surged from Hell King's skin to form thick flame armor. His body, at a speed visible to the naked eye, began to skyrocket, and in other places, thousands of miles away, it was absorbed by it and turned into nutrients for his growth. He stands proudly, holds a long axe, and burns blue blazing flames all over his body. At the same time, the cosmic starry sky starts to wither at the same time as death. Broken? There was a flash of insanity in his eyes. First, he raised the long axe in his hand and slashed it down to smash the dusk pit under his feet. Immediately, he opened his mouth again and directed it toward the falling sun. Make a roar that shakes for 9 days and 10 places. Explosive. I saw him burning blue flames, all gathered in his open dog mouth, forming a huge blue ball, with thunderous thunder and lightning shuttle. As soon as this blue ball appeared, it suddenly exudes surging power of extinction, far exceeding all his previous moves. This fucking was forced to perform a virtual explosion. It seems that he has been forced by the sword, unparalleled to the point that he must take out the killer. As long as Jian Wushuang survives this move, the fucking will surely die. Suddenly, the supreme master of countless divine powers clenched his fists, and a heart reached his throat. Boom! I saw this blue ball, turning it into a thick beam of light in the mouth of the bowl, and it spewed out of Hell King's mouth instantly, and was bombarded in the falling syrup big sun. For a moment, the world lost its voice. The dazzling and brilliant light emanated from the two. The next moment, everyone saw the round of syrup, which was directly penetrated by the fucking exploding blue ball from the middle and scattered around. Good job. Wu Jian's eyes were narrowed, and his face was not panic-stricken, but the flames of war were burning in his eyes. The turbulent warfare, straight into the Shaohan, shocked for 9 days. Taro sword code, 5th style, Taro. Jian Wushuang uttered this word coldly. Suddenly, a round of FA phase appeared behind Jian Wushuang. A handsome young man holding a hip flask in his left hand and dancing a sword with his right hand, but with an endlessly chic figure, appeared behind the sword Wushuang. I am not someone else. It is the one who asks the world with a smile during the peak period. Before the sword Wushuang, the 5th power of the Tailuo sword code has not yet been fully used, but now, after the sword Wushuang breaks through the medium supreme, the power of this sword is no less powerful than the true hit, with the movement of Jian Wushuang, slowly raising the Taro Excalibur, the Titan Supreme facial phase behind the sword Wushuang, also raised the Taro Excalibur. Cut! Jian Wushuang's eyebrows were cold, and he spit out the word coldly. Suddenly, Taro Supreme and Sword Warriors are integrated. A sword like Changhong, like a dragon, was instantly chopped out by the Tai Luo Excalibur, splitting the world and running through the sun and the moon. Before this sword, it has surpassed the half-step invincible supreme realm. After the sword was cut out, everything looked bleak across the sky, leaving only the glory of the sword. Even the many invincible and 6-marked supreme fighting in the distance couldn't help looking at his head slightly and looked towards Jian Wushuang. Is this guy so accomplished in kendo? The captain of the 7th team, Once the first person in the universe to knife the path, Supreme Heiyuan sighed. The little guy is becoming more and more shadowy. Wu Wuxian, immortal, flashed in the same beautiful eyes. Just now, she actually felt the glorious and heroic attitude of Jian Wushuang. This could not help her. My heart beat. Hell King defeated. In the void, the place where the tissue stands. He wore a red mask, rubbed a golden card in his hand, and shook his head indifferently. Next moment, he capped the action of playing golden cards. When this son grows up, it will become a trump card in Xian Yi's hands. Let's take him back for transformation. Boom! It was like Long Jianhong, and finally collided with Hell King's exploding ball. This sword can be Pingshan, reclamation, almost instantaneously. The Yu Kanshu www.okanshu.com, that overwhelming and exploding virtual ball showing a destructive and rotten posture, is like a knife-cut tofu, and it is beveled by this sword. At your fingertips, this sword splits the thorns and chops again, towards the fucking. Do not! The fucking's face changed greatly, and a look of horror appeared in his eyes. He just woke up from his deep sleep. He still has to show his talents in the universe, and he has countless great things to do. How can he die here? Strangled in the hands of what he considers a garbage ant? As soon as he turned to escape, he saw that the heavens and the earth were turned into a line, and the most glorious sword was cut diagonally on the fucking's body. Tear it! Suddenly, a sword mark appeared on the magnificent body of Hell King, from his left shoulder to his right waist. Soon, boom! Hell King's body was separated, and he was split into two by this sword. Alas! Immediately, the body of the fucking was constantly struggling and twisting, trying to reorganize and resurrect, but the fierce and domineering sword energy was repeatedly crushed and killed. The life of the fucking quickly dissipated. Just 10 breaths later, the fucking completely turned into a pile of black ash, and with the anger of the sword, it turned into nothingness. With a sword, the fucking is dead. Chapter 45:53. Hell King fell. Stinging his body, he quickly collapsed and disintegrated, turned into countless black ash, was stirred by the strong wind of the air, and then completely dissipated in the air. Due to the vacuum belt created by the battle between Hell King and Sword Wushuang, only Sword Wushuang is left, standing with a sword. His face is proud, and a black robe does not stick to the earth, as if he was shooting the fairy, and it is like the peerless sword Ling Chen. Everyone is staring at Jian Wushuang. They did not expect that this battle would end so quickly. They had expected that Jian Wushuang would win, but they did not expect that they had just used the virtual Hell King, and between the hands, they were directly suppressed by Jian Wushuang's sharp sword. This victory came so fast that they couldn't react. Sword Wushuang so winning? The 9 kings of calamity, the overlord, and the supreme master of countless divine powers all stared at each other, and the shock on their faces couldn't stop. For a moment, the audience was dead. After 3 breaths, the whole universe is boiling. God bless the universe. An old-fashioned top-level extreme clenched his fists. His whole body was too excited and shivered with excitement. God bless my magical universe. Sword Wushuang is so proud of the evil. I think at the beginning, the 6 top forces, such as the Taishu Temple, the Dragon Clan, and the Diwu Temple, also had to hang and kill Jian Wushuang. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang stood up. Otherwise this time, I will wait for danger. Jian Wushuang is the treasure of our universe, but also the hope of the future of our universe. We must never have half-minded thinking about him. Countless people are excited. Then the several supreme masters who were about to be killed under the axe of Hell King were rushed by Jian Wushuang to rescue them. And they even stared at Long Qing, who was shrinking aside, saying with a sense, Jiang Wushuang is my lifeguard of the iron fence old monster. From now on, my iron-hound old man is the sword of Wushuang only. Yes, if there is no sword warrior, my heavenly side has died in the hands of that doghead monster. If anyone dares to say that sword warrior is not good in the future, he will be my enemy. So, is Lao Tzu, Jian Wushuang, I give you this life. If you have any orders from now on, you say hello, Shang Chaobi falls to Huang Quan. I am afraid to say no to Joey. I will thunder. Don't die. These people started talking. Sun Longqing flinched aside, looking at Jian Wushuang with complex eyes, and there was a touch of fear in his eyes. The sword of Wushuang's sword splits the heavens and the earth, separates chaos, and runs through the sun, moon, and star river, which is too terrifying. He asked himself that he could never take the sword. How can this guy's strength improve so fast? Chun Longqing murmured to himself. He practiced 130 chaos eras and reached a half-step invincible supremacy. From the perspective of the universe, it is an incredible existence. Even if it is placed in the dragon family, it can also be included in history, but it is the leader of the 4 generations of the dragon family. The sword is unparalleled. So far less than 1,000,000 years of practice, he has surpassed him in combat power. The gap was so big that he felt hopeless. In the void, as Jian Wushuang slashed Hell King, the morale of the entire divine universe increased by a few points. On the contrary, it was the person of the virtual universe. If his face was ashes, his body would tremble like a sieve. Kill. Yen Jian Wushuang's black hair flew up, standing proudly in the void, coldly spitting out this sentence. The utterance of the words fell, and the sword unparalleled stepped forward, and once again turned into a sword rainbow, running through the sun and the moon, and beheaded towards the camp of the virtual universe. Behind him, the supreme of the divine power universe roared in response. Kill! 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 Kill, 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 kill. Numerous medium, high top, and even half-step invincible supremes are headed by Jian Wushuang with a terrific murderous outburst, killing towards the camp of the virtual universe. They are like a sharp knife, fiercely inserted into the virtual soldiers of the virtual universe. And Sword Wushuang is the sharpest point of this sharp knife. Cut stars. Wu Jian's eyes were cold and cold, flashing cold, raised the Tai Luo Excalibur, and severely chopped off. Suddenly, a moment of Buddha groaned, and the trembling voice of the devil's cry cried out from the Taro Excalibur. The blade of the sacred sword suddenly trembled tens of thousands of times, forming a long silver sword rainbow. This sword, across Tianhe, dominates the starry sky, among the faint, as if there are 9 heavenly immortals. Boom! Take a sword and kill more than 100 virtual respects. The entire virtual universe camp is filled with sorrow and sorrow. Even if there is a strong one, he did not die on this sword, but he was caught up and killed by the king of 9 robbers, Iron Fence boss, an overlord who were closely followed by Jian Wushuang. After a while, not to mention the battle between Su Xing and the cosmic god, nor the battle between the invincible supreme and the 6 marks, and the triumphant nature of the war between the ordinary supreme and the ordinary Su Zun gradually leaned towards the side of the divine universe. Come, in the void, where the organization is. Bite 1, aren't we shot yet? Wu Yen said with a frown. I heard the words covered by the red mask on my face, and did not rush to answer, but just the right eye that was exposed, watching Jian Wushuang. In the waveless gaze of Gujing, he flickered slightly. Hunichi has a good hand. I seemed to sigh, and sighed slightly. Immediately, taking up the golden card in his hand, he threw it in the direction of the sword, unparalleled. After a while, this golden card spins out of his hand. Go ahead. On the battlefield, Jian Wushuang was slashing with his sword. Suddenly, he seemed to perceive something, and suddenly looked up and looked in the direction of the void. A flash of astonishment flashed in his eyes. The hair was upright. And now, next moment, I saw a golden card jumping out of the void and constantly dilated pupils in Jian Wu's eyes. A great terror between life and death surged in Jian Wushuang's heart, a chill straight from his back to the top of his head. This card has a sense of danger like never before. This is... Jian Wushuang's expression was shocked. However, he hasn't waited for his feet to rise, take a weird force, and blasted off this golden card. Suddenly, a force of folded space-time was uploaded from the golden card, and the entire universe of starry sky began to tremble quickly. Next moment, horrible things happened, as if three-dimensional space-time has become two-dimensional space-time, whether it is Jian Wushuang or the starry sky in the universe, or the other two cosmic personnel who are fighting. All the movements stop and become a painting. Wu Jian, Wushuang, and so on, including countless stars, all disappeared. There is only one painting left, floating down in the void. The swordsman and others were all in the painting. This is Dimensional Reduction Blow. Chapter 45-54. What is dimensionality reduction? If we say that the universe is formed into a three-dimensional space, and everyone is a three-dimensional existence, then two-dimensional is a very different existence from three-dimensional space. For example, the patterns on the drawings, the characters in the villain's book, etc., it is flat, rigid, without any vitality. This golden card actually folds the space directly at 360 degrees without dead angles in all directions, making it one of the three dimensions of the universe, and wirelessly compresses it to collapse. All of this is really terrifying. Jian Wushuang couldn't even make room for struggling, so he felt like he was falling into a trance, and he couldn't move at all. In the distance, some people in the two universes, which were not within the scope of the dimensionality reduction, suddenly took a breath of air and were shocked. What kind of ghost and means? They looked at each other with a fierce disbelief in their eyes. This method is far beyond the scope of their understanding. Even if he is invincible, he just throws his hands up, blasts millions of stars, breaks the galaxy, and swallows the sun. This is the power generated by real strength. They have never heard of it. A small card can directly change the structure of the universe in silence. I only have some old-fashioned virtual universes and honors. After flashing my eyes, I seem to remember something, and I can't help but feel shocked. Tissue eater. Here is the tissue eater. The ancestors of the red leaf ancestors of the Manchu ancestors at that time, tens of thousands of disciples, because they offended the phagocytized tissue, and the phagocytized tissue was directly struck with dimensionality reduction to instantly destroy it. Only these lunatics have such terrible and weird means. They looked around in a panic. Apparently, the phagocytic organization was with them as a virtual universe, but they faced the phagocyte without any joy at all, but panic to the extreme. It is impossible to speculate on tissues with common sense. They are mysterious, weird, and powerful, just like a bottomless ocean, which is impossible to see through. Even the false gods in two cataclysmic wars never mention the phagocytic organization, let alone force the phagocytic organization to shoot. The background is horrifying. Sure enough, after their words fell, the 7 figures in black robes stepped out of the void step by step. They are all dressed in loose black robes with different appearances. There are explosive women who look enchanting and smirk between sentient beings. There are wolf-headed men holding black long swords and tall monsters full of weird tattoos. They are like meatballs. The obese giant who walked first was a person with a thin figure and a red mask on his face, showing only one eye. He is one of the most mysterious beings, even in the tissues. Even the other people in the tissues don't know much about him. It really is them. The numerous vain esteems of the imaginary universe shrank their pupils, and quickly avoided them. Those who were far away from these 7 people did not dare to block their way. I swallowed an expression of indifference, stepping into the universe step by step. He reached out and grabbed the golden card reflecting the bright starry sky, and soared whoosh-wong and others a spin and flew into his hand again. This golden card is about to fall into the hands of one bite. An old optimist giant hand, full of age spots, suddenly emerged from the void. When this golden card was about to reach one hand, he grabbed the golden card first, and then fiercely moved to the next one, pulled it into the void. Oh, glittering, his eyelids were raised slightly, and his gaze looked towards the void with which the giant hand retracted. I saw there an old man with dim eyes, aging spots on his face, and an old man full of decay, walking through the void step by step. This old man is no one else, but he is the Gava Supreme of the 5 Chief Supremes of the Palace of Life. The supreme silence of Gaifu was silent, but his back was straight, holding a golden card in his hand, and looked at the 7 people in a peaceful expression. At a glance, the golden card was taken away by Gaifu Supreme, and his expression was equally flat, but there was a slight surprise in his eyes, and he said, "Oh, is this universe approaching people at this level?" After the words fell, he shook his head, as if regretful, and then said to himself, "But unfortunately, the source of life is too severely damaged. I am afraid that it has not been a few years to live a good life. It is impossible to really go beyond this step and reach another level." When people around me heard this, they could not help scratching their heads. Take this step? At this level? What does it mean? Gaifu heard that there were no waves in his turbid eyes, but he said lightly, "There is an old man, Jian Wushuang, you can't take it today." After he finished speaking, a red flame emerged from Gavro's hand, burning the golden card. This golden card suddenly burst into smoke and began to twist. After a few breaths, Xian Dagon was hit by dimensionality reduction, and Jian Wushuang et al., who was sealed in another dimension, jumped out of the void. Wu Jian's expression was pale, and his forehead was covered with bean sweat beads. He first looked at the 7 people who had eaten the tissues, and there was a deep fear in his eyes. This dimensionality reduction strikes to the extreme. In the face of this dimensionality reduction blow, he didn't have any resistance and was directly suppressed by the seal, a magical power that could not show any trace. Even if he was rescued by Gava Supreme at this moment, he couldn't bear anger in his heart. At the same time, a flash of enlightenment flashed through his heart. He finally understood that why the billions of souls in the kingdom of Tai Luo, which Tai Luo Supreme had opened up, were all killed in an instant. As soon as Guyen heard the words of Supreme Gav, there was no anger on his face, but he took a deep look at Jian Wushuang and immediately said, "Trust me, we will meet again." The words of the crickets dropped, and a black water stain appeared under the feet of the 7 people headed by Bit 1. The 7 of them sink gradually and disappear into this starry sky. Until they left completely, Jian Wushuang finally let out a long sigh of relief, and then looked at Supreme Gaifu with some surprises but more grateful to say, "Gaifu, thank you for your help." He paused. Wu Jianchuang asked, "Are you okay?" Gaofu nodded his head, and just about to speak, a flash of flushing appeared on the old face, and his mouth spit out the dark blood. With the spit of this blood, Gaifu Supreme's already decaying breath became even more debilitating. Gaifu Sr. When Jian saw this, he couldn't help but change his face. He quickly reached out his hand and went to help Gaifu Supreme. Chapter 55. I don't care about the husband. After waiting for Jian Wushuang to reach out to support Gaifu Supreme, he saw that Gaifu Supreme waved his hand toward Jian Wushuang, signaling that he was okay. Jian Wushuang saw this and had to stop his movements, but his heart was sinking. I covered the supreme body. I'm afraid it won't be long. Seeing the expression of Jian Wushuang, Supreme could not help but force a stubborn smile on his face, and said comfortingly, Jian Wushuang, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. Life and death are just the norm in the world. The old man saw you have what you have today. I am also at ease, even if the old man really left this time, and I want to have you in the future to take care of the life shrine. The life shrine will definitely come better than under my leadership. After he finished speaking, he raised his head and looked up at the battlefield of Invincible Supreme and 6-mark Void. For the divine universe, the situation is not optimistic. Although in the war between ordinary Supreme and trace-level Vanity, due to the addition of Jian Wushuang, the victory has basically been locked, but if you really want to reverse the decision between the two universes, you still have to look at the invincible supremacy between them, fighting and the battle between the gods of the gods and the gods of the universe. The power of the divine power universe is aided by 8 parties. The number of invincible supremes is not much worse than these 34 virtual honors, but in terms of combat power, it is a bit worse. The old ancestor of the Ba, the white ape, was fierce and overbearing. Each punch had the power of a starburst. He opened the bow from side to side, and under a wild bombardment, he immediately overwhelmed the right virtual envoys in charge of thunder and lightning. But except for him, almost all the invincible supremes are at a disadvantage. Wu Yuan was still the invincible Wu Jianxian. After fighting against Gu Heng, he immediately fell into a disadvantage. Gu Heng Suzun, who once dominated the era in the virtual universe, in terms of his years of practice, he is an ancient figure who is several times the number of Wu Jianxian. Various killing magical powers emerge from his hands, forcing Wu Jianxian to do nothing, parry without a fight back. The most important thing is that Gu Heng has a pair of copper rings in his hands. This pair of copper rings is indestructible, strong, and abnormal, and has the ability to zoom in and out. The 2 copper rings are horns of each other, and they are pulled to the left and right, which is really tricky. Photo. Gu Heng Suzun folded his hands and suddenly drank a drink. In a short time, a yellow light surged on the pair of copper rings, which actually stretched out like a rope. One of the copper rings was a magic sword that pierced Wu Jianxian first, so that a copper ring was from Wu Jianxian. Put it on your body, and then tighten sharply, binding Wu Jianxian also. Wu Jianxian's face changed, and she wanted to break free. However, this copper ring was like the 5 elements, mountain-suppressing sun monkey. Wu Jianxian became larger, and it became larger. Wu Jianxian became smaller, and it did not give her a chance to escape. Ha 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 ha, little maiden skin, let's get hold of it. This seat looks good to you. As long as you are willing to be a girl under this seat is worth your life, even if you are obedient. Taking down this universe, you can even ask the Lord God for a color, and it is not impossible to make you the master of the astral domain. Su Gushuan laughed loudly, but there was no sympathy in his hands. On the copper ring that bound Wu Jianxian to death, he sharply pierced a circle of short blades with the length of his fingers in order to hang Wu Jianxian directly. Look for death. Wu Jianxian heard the words, and suddenly a pair of beautiful eyes flickered with coldness, and the murderous intensity was extremely extreme. Supernatural power, changed shape. Wu Wuxian spit out this sentence coldly. After the voice fell, I saw a flash of light flashing on her. Not far from her, a figure exactly like her suddenly appeared. Huh! Suddenly, Wu Jianxian, who was bound by a copper ring, was completely hanged by the copper ring and turned into a shadow. Kill! Wu Wuxian Xiankio's face flashed pale for a moment, then took a deep breath, and once again raised the sword to kill Gu Hengshuan. The other side of the battlefield. One has a 6-marked virtual honor with double wings on his back and a waist around his waist, and his knees are hanging down. Then his hands twisted for a while and turned into 2 narrow, sharp swords. Dragon, I ate you. The 6-marked Suzun stepped on his feet and suddenly jumped like a flying mantis towards a 3-generation dragon clan. His hands, which turned into sharp knives, flashed a severe cold light in the air, enough to split the stars and the moon. Roar! The 3 generations of the purple dragon, who saw the whole body in purple, saw panic in their eyes, open their mouths, and spit out a star-sized purple venom. The battle between Invincible Supreme and 6-mark Void has become fiercer and fierce, and has entered a fevered state. Although no one has fallen, according to this situation, the Invincible Supreme on the side of the divine universe, the fall is only a matter of time. At that time, once the Invincible Supreme falls, the balance of the top combat power between the 2 universes will be broken, and the virtual universe can free up its hands, creating a 2-to-1 situation. At that time, it will lay the ruin of the divine universe in one fell swoop, draw full rotation, and put it back on Jian Wushuang and Gafu Supreme. A single spark can start a prairie fire. Ji Gvu took a deep breath, and there was a firmness in his eyes, and he muttered to himself, "Then my old body will be transformed into the fire of—" His words fell, just as Gav Supreme planned to burn himself, and become the first fire to burn up the void universe. His shoulder was suddenly patted by the sword Wushuang. "Okay." Gai Jivi turned back, suspiciously. "Gai Fu, what do you want to do? Younger people do not stop you, but before that, younger people want you to see something." Qi Jian Wushuang said softly. Immediately, Yu read the book www. Ukanshu. Kam turned his right hand over, and an iron-colored token appeared in his hand. This token is exactly the sword Wushuang, who was in the land of the gods. It was developed by the Taoist master of the Life Shrine, and was given to him. He looked at this rusted token first, and then he looked at those turbid eyes, and suddenly his eyes became red. 100,000 virtual times. I do NT know the life and death of the Lord of the Palace of Life. The world only knows that the Temple of Life was opened by Tao Yen Supreme, and then guarded by Gav Supreme. I do not know. At that time, Gaifu Supreme was the shadow behind Tao Yen Supreme, the most loyal old servant. Young Master. Alive? Gaifu Supreme opening. His title is not the Palace Master, but the Young Master. Perhaps he has not called the word Young Master for a long time. Therefore, the 2 words appearing from his mouth seem a bit stiff. Yes. Wu Jianwushuang nodded. I was sure of Jian Wushuang's determination, and Gafu Supreme laughed. The first laugh was free and easy, and the smile was relieved, and the smile was unrelated. Sword unparalleled. Since the Young Master has given you the Palace Master token, then you are the 2nd-generation Palace Master of my Life Shrine. I have no wish or regret. The words fell, Gav up to respect, raised his head, and looked at the battlefield of Invincible Supreme and 6 marks. A strong breath that has never been before poured out from him. Chapter 45, 56. Okay. What happened? This breath is. Suddenly, the 6-marked virtual inferiority and Invincible Supreme being engaged in the virtual universe stopped the battle in their hands and looked down in confusion. As a result, they saw Gavro, who was burning with the divine power. It's him. It's this guy. He is still alive. Some people who had participated in the last battle of the Holocaust and knew Supreme Gava had a look of terror on their faces. At that time, Gav Extreme was still young, but it was one of the absolute main forces of the divine universe. Almost in this realm, there were few rivals. For this reason, The virtual universe side also sent a few six-marked virtual princes to slay Gafu Supreme. They clearly remembered that Gafu Supreme was seriously injured and was dying at the time, and it was about to fall. Rewind. This lunatic intends to die with us. Suddenly, a six-marked virtual Zune pupil shrank, as if aware of something, and shouted in horror. As soon as this remark was made, these six-marked virtual respects suddenly changed their faces, and they all retreated back, and some invincible supremes of the divine power universe are also shocked, and their eyes are unbelievable. Gab this guy. The Emperor Taishu ended the battle, panting slightly, and looked at Gafu Supreme with complex eyes. His relationship with Supreme Gav was regarded as an enemy and friend. Before the outbreak of the Holocaust, the two had a lot of grudges, but with the outbreak of the Holocaust, the two became comrades in arms. Even on the battlefield, Supreme Gav had saved his life. As a result, his feelings for Supreme Gav were rather complicated. It is also because of this complexity that when Jian Wushuang almost killed the Binyu Supreme, he only mentioned that he beat the sword Wushuang and did not kill the killer instead, but left the universe with the Binyu Supreme. Deep. Otherwise, relying on the strength of the Emperor Taishu, even if the sword was double-clicked and killed, the life shrine at the time had no way to take him. The sword is unparalleled. The old man has gone. After all, this world is your young man. She patted Jian Shou's shoulders, and Gav Supreme turned his head back and took a deep look at King Jujia. Then he didn't hesitate again, and stepped on his right foot again. The tail flames meteorite Mars, with an indomitable attitude, slammed into several six-marked virtual honors who were retreating. Teacher. King Jujia clenched his fists, arrogantly cold like him, and cold and ruthless like him. It was also at this moment that he felt a sore nose and a deep sense of weakness. It was Supreme Gap who brought him back from a remote star field like a beggar and gave him a home. The first practice, the first awakening of the perfect special level of life, the first breakthrough, and the first time called the Temple of Life, the first day of pride. All of this was given to him by Supreme Gavo. For him, perhaps it wasn't the billions of souls in the universe that really made him back in the water at this moment. Not the people in the Temple of Life, but the look he wanted to see, the supreme governance approving him. This look he finally saw, but there was only sadness in his heart, not joy. Boom! In countless, all kinds of eyes, Gafu Supreme slammed into those six-marked virtual honors. With this collision, Gav Extreme broke through and returned to its peak. This collision was the strongest blow from Gav Supreme at the last moment of life. This collision is unstoppable, and it is dead. Do not! Guheng Shuzuan gave a panic and growled. Virtual explosion. The spider that is full of spiders all over the body at the same time used the strongest magical power to burst, and at the same time made countless tentacles. All exploded. There are more six-mark vanities, and they are doing their best. However, these are useless in the face of supreme governance. All useless. These magical powers only touched the skyfire flames transformed by the Supreme of Gav, and were instantly crushed and annihilated. They retreated, wanting to return to the void universe through the fissures of the void to avoid the blow. However, what made them desperate was that when they first wanted to enter the void and return to the void universe, they were shocked to find that the void crack leading to the void universe and the divine universe was closed for some reason. What's going on? Why is this happening? Crack in the void. What happened? Damn. Countless six-marked virtual respects have a blue complexion, watching the flames in their pupils become more and more magnificent. There is no escape. Avoid it. Even the void crack has been closed for no reason. Let them not think deeply. Laugh. The turbulent fire transformed into the supreme governance. All these six-marked virtual honors were swallowed up in an instant. In the light of fire, the despair roar of these six-marked vein lords, as well as horror and terror. This is the supreme gap which burned life, and the blow from it was bright, gorgeous, and shocking at the same time. Boom! A moment later, it seemed like a huge firework burst into the air like a mighty starry sky. It's so huge, so beautiful. Countless people looked at this firework, all forgetting to breathe. Their eyes were lost for a while. The fireworks gradually dissipated, and the governance was gone. At least 3 six-mark virtual honors disappeared with it. As if deleted by the world, there is no breath left in the void that burned the sky and turned the whole Bodhi's life into a raging flame of anger. Not only burned the six-marked venerable emptiness of the virtual universe, but also ignited himself. Gav Supreme, fallen. Countless people were stunned, as if being fixed, and looked at this scene stiffly, with only endless shock and admiration in their eyes. With one's own body transforming into the sky of anger, breaking Ling Xiao, stepping on Jiuyo without remorse. Old friend, Bazu ancestors have complex eyes and sighed softly. He once talked with Gafu Supreme in the East China Sea and had a deep friendship with Gafu Supreme, using the starless sky as a chessboard and the stars as chess pieces. Gov Supreme, respect. The Martyr Gourd fairy, who asked Big Dream 3,000 years old, "What year is this evening?" took a deep breath, poured a glass of clear water from the gourd in his hand, and poured it into the stars. "Sorry to know you this way." He didn't know Gawaf, but at this moment he was convinced by Gawaf's courage and fearlessness. "Teacher," King Jujia's face turned pale instantly. The whole portrait was drained, his legs were soft, and he almost fell from the air. The sword of the crowd in the crowd, although there was no speech, was like a heavy stone pressed against the chest, so heavy that the breathing became slow. Chapter 45-57. Divine Power, Universe. 34 Xuanzuan have retreated to the edge of the extraterrestrial battlefield, and behind them there is a crack in the void. However, the void cracks that had allowed them to go in and out were completely closed. There is no road behind, and there is chasing in front. The blow from the burning life of Gaver Supreme directly reversed the situation. 34 virtual lords, who were originally implicated in each other, already had at least a few six-mark virtual lords, and fell in the death blow of Gafu Supreme. And the remaining almost 30 vain honors, all with broken robes and embarrassing stature. They looked at each other. Their faces were iron blue. "Master, what should we do now?" A six-mark vanity, Shun Shung said. The naked, white-haired, burly old man didn't answer when he heard the words, but froze his eyes, staring at the ancestors of the Pa clan, his eyes full of fear. Gave Supreme's desperate blow, although he took away a few six-marked virtual lords, including ancient hung virtual lords and sky spider monsters. But this is not the worst news. The most sinking in the mind of the white-haired, burly old man was the closing of the void crack. He just tried to communicate with the surviving people and horses of the virtual universe, but found that as the cracks closed, the communication between them was also interrupted. This means that they don't know what happened in the virtual universe. And most importantly, they can't go back. The rules of the two universes, the virtual universe and the divine universe, are not interlinked, and even the things they practice are different. This means that they cannot recover the virtual force in the divine universe. Now, the war between them and the divine universe has come to an end. It is when they are weakest that they cannot be replenished. The divine universe can slowly kill them here, even if they are grinded with water. Taking a deep breath, the right imaginary of the imaginary universe, that is, a flash of fruit in the eyes of the white-haired burly old man, said, "Contact the Lord of the Gods immediately, otherwise all of us will die here." After speaking, the right imaginary squeezed at the fingertips, forcing a drop of black blood and pressing it on his brows. Suddenly, Yoshu sure seemed to have a sense of what happened. He immediately fell to his knees and kept talking about the words that summoned Lord Shushan. Kill. On the other side, the patriarch's ancestors flashed in the eyes, and the word kill was coldly spit out in his mouth. When it turned into a rolling day, the right fist gathered thousands of winds and bombarded the 34 virtual respects of the virtual universe, and go. And some other invincible supremes also offered various killing magical powers, followed closely. Kill him while he is ill. Not only is the invincible supreme moving, at this moment, the ordinary supreme, led by Jian Wushuang, King Jujia, and others, also has a flash of murder in his eyes. Jian Wushuang took the lead. The royal sword killed and straddled the sky. Behind him, the king of 9 dragons urged his talents to become supernatural, and the demon evolved. Kill, kill, kill everything. You guys, bury the teacher. The king of 9 kings had white hair, and at this moment, all turned into a glamorous red, and in his eyes, there were 2 rounds of blood moons. A violent and mad breath came out of him. Okay. Jian Wushuang looked back at Zhu Jiawang, and his heart was startled. King Nine Kam enchanted. If the death of Supreme Gap is the one who has hit the most, then there is no doubt that it is the King of 9 calamities. In the heart of King Nine Calves, the status of Gav Supreme is more important than his parents. He watched Gafu Supreme fall in front of him. At this moment, he was enchanted, dead. A 5-marked vanity stopped in front of King Jojia. Before waiting for the 3-marked virtual respect to take action, King Jojia's big hand has been slammed on top of his head. He actually slaps his head directly into his chest, and then turns into a pool of meat sauce. Go die. Come die. Go to hell. The king of 9 robbers danced wildly with both palms, and each palm shot directly killed an imaginary. On his skin, an ancient black divine pattern emerged, and his breath soared at a rate visible to the naked eye. Medium extreme peak. Medium extreme satisfaction. Huh. Supreme. Breakthrough. After the breakthrough, King Jukai's combat power is a leap and jump. The former king of 9 calamities was calm, proud, and indifferent. So now he has completely turned into a weapon on earth. The sea is raging, and his breath has not stopped. It is still skyrocketing. His practice rose madly at an unprecedented speed. No one is his one enemy, and within 100 miles of him, he has completely turned into Shura purgatory. In this scene, not only are the ordinary virtual lords of the virtual universe split apart, but even the supreme master of the divine universe feels his eyelids stunned and stunned. 1 king of 9 calamities, 1 sword without a match. These 2 people who came out of the palace of life are more perverted than one. An old-fashioned supreme tongue. Look at me. You only need to join forces with Jian Wushuang and the king of Jiuzhai, and am afraid that these 2 people will be able to sweep the ordinary vanity of the entire virtual universe, right? Brilliant world, great world. Now, the king of 9 calamities, I'm afraid it's not weaker than Jian Wushuang too. These supremes lamented. On the other side, Jian Wushuang just killed the Jojia king once. Jian Wushuang's killing is more direct and devastating than the 9 kings. He was like the scholar who traveled far and wide, and like the auspicious goddess who didn't touch the world's fireworks, his expression was so cold and stern. However, in his hands, the sharp sword energy cut by the Tai Luo divine sword is in all directions, rushing to the Shaohan, madly harvesting the life of the virtual universe. Many weak esteemed virtuosos even only saw the action of sword Wushuang. Out of the sword, the Jinghong Yijian, like Bailong, has already killed it. Countless people looked at Jian Wushuang. Their hearts coincided with each other, and at the same time a word was flowing. 1 battle for 3,000 miles, 1 sword was once a million division. who says uselessness is a scholar, and a scholar's sword is also king. Just when the killing was at its most intense, the right messenger, who kept on telling Su Sun, stopped talking. Soon, boom, the sky is cracking. An old man with white hair was the first to shoot out from the cracked sky. Master Elder God. Everyone's eyes are a little bit condensed. I saw the appearance of Zhou God, as usual, but in his right sleeve cuff, it was obviously broken. Seeing this, everyone could not help but sink in their hearts. Immediately afterwards, they saw the imaginary shrouded in endless black mist stepping down from the sky with their hands. He did not use any virtual force, but seemed to automatically lift him up as if heaven and earth were like the 9-day demon. Between the heavens and the earth, a tragedy is played for him. Su Shun's red eyes only slightly shifted, and he saw the many virtual respects that were forced to a side, and the right Su Xing, who was kneeling on the ground, and said indifferently, "Useless waste." List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 45-58. In one lifetime, there are 3 autumns. Those who do something are called gentlemen. If you do nothing, you are a hero. The meaning of a hero is not to save a man born in water and fire, then he is called a hero. Heroes are the ones who dare to take the world by storm. Knowing that there are tigers in the mountains, they prefer to travel to the mountains. Although there are thousands of people, I will go. Therefore, Gavro is enough to bear the name of a hero. With his own body, he started the epic beginning of this world of controversy and reversed the victory and defeat of the 2 universes. However, as the virtual stepped out of the crack in the sky, an immense force suddenly came to the audience, isolating the countless divine power of the universe, which was being killed. Master Xian Shun. Yoshu bowed to the ground with a guilty face, and he and Zhuo Shusher were the 2 chief commanders of this battle. From the present, their command is undoubtedly unsuccessful. Useless waste. The false shook his head indifferently, then looked at the Zhou, and his mouth made a low sound like a man and a woman. God of God, 100,000 virtual periods are missing. Your growth really disappoints me. The of Zhou heard the words sinking and did not answer. The of virtual gods was born to devour all the negative emotions of the world's desire, greed, obsession, blood, resentment, and so on. Since 100,000 virtual times before, virtual gods have been seriously injured by him. Not only did his injuries recover, but his strength went one step further, and even the trouble he had dealt with became tricky. Su Shin shook his head and said again, God, this knows the abacus you played, sends people into our virtual universe, and closes the void crack channel with Fengtian banner, right? With this remark, Jian Wushuang could not help but shrink his pupils. He knows the existence of Feng Tianqi. Before waiting for the god of Zhou to speak, I saw the vision of the virtual turned again. One by one glanced over the faces of the supreme master of the divine universe, and finally his eyes fell on Jian Wushuang. If I'm not mistaken, this is the person who entered the virtual universe. Su Shen extended his finger and pointed his fingertips at Sword Wushuang. Suddenly, his fingertips seemed to turn into a vortex, and countless black mist condensed at his fingertips, turning into a horrible black beam, and instantly hit the swordsman. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's pupils dilated, and a big terror between life and death surged in his heart. He didn't expect that the Xingshan would suddenly attack him. This change happened too quickly, and it was so unexpected that under the black beam, Jian Wushuang was like the ants facing the collapse of Wu Yue, unable to resist the slightest resistance. The gap between him and the virtual is too big. It's like a cowardly baby facing a mythical giant with a height of billions of meters. Even if it is a breath, the virtual can kill the sword, unparalleled. Just as Jian Wushuang clenched his fists and a rush of madness resigned in his eyes, a deep, cold humming suddenly sounded in the void. Immediately afterwards, they saw the figure of the Zhou, who appeared in front of Jian Wushuang, out of thin air. Su Shen, it's too much to start with the junior, isn't it? The god of God calmly spoke, and at the same time he reached out his hand. Suddenly, the black beam of light was swept away by the of the sky, and suddenly disappeared. Seeing nothing, there was no regret, but he shook his head indifferently. God of God, do you think that using the Fengtian banner to seal the void crack, can I do nothing? He smiled and said with a smile, an infinite number of dark mists suddenly appeared on the virtual god, mixed with things like a Rubik's Cube, and quickly poured into the void crack. Seeing this Rubik's Cube, the god of God suddenly changed his face slightly and frowned. The lock of the space-time channel? Shushan, did you make a deal with the emperor? Su Xian did not answer, but raised his head and closed his eyes, spread his hands to embrace the world. Open it, the lock of time and space. Boom! Instantly, more and more black mist was rising from Shushan. Until the end, the sky was covered by the sun, and it all swarmed into the void of the void. In this dark mist, horrible sound waves similar to the horrible grievances are constantly heard, making people sound numb. Boom, boom. The muffled sounds continued to pass from the fissures of the void, followed by the breath of the void universe. That crack began to spread and crack at a rate that was visible to the naked eye, and the crack gradually became larger. It's like a giant. Open your eyes completely and wake up from your deep sleep. Feng Tianqi is loose. Jian Wushuang's face changed slightly. He could sense that the 99 Fengtian flags that had been deeply inserted into the void, in the void of the void of the void universe, were constantly squeezed out by a strange force. It's like a nail deeply rooted in the ground, being severely pulled out. One side. On both sides. 3 sides. 99 Fengtian flags continued to emerge from the void, and the void crack leading to the 2 universes is still growing. The void universe is inside the void. The old man of the red Buddha and 8 desolates, who was anxious like an ant on a hot pot, had a gloomy face and kept pace back and forth. I don't know what to do. Suddenly, the old man of the red Buddha smiled and said, Master Ba Kuang, look at it. The seal of the forbidden space is loosening. Okay. Ba Huang Shuzuan looked up and noticed immediately that in the void there were black flags of God pattern manifesting from the void. Not only that, the 87 void cracks are also expanding at an alarming rate. It must be the means of Lord Xian Shun, divine power universe, extraterrestrial battlefield, the countless emptiness of the imaginary universe, watching the ever-expanding void cracks, felt the breath from the imaginary universe, the spirit suddenly refreshed, and his face showed joy. Master Xian Shun is so powerful. With the 99 Fengtian flag, he was pulled out of the void. Boom! Suddenly, a blast exploded. The connection channel between the 2 universes is completely opened. That void crack had spread to about 1,000 feet, just like the monster's mouth, squatting quietly in the void. Even the wind has come out of this crack. The divine power of the many extremes suddenly changed his face. Even the of the sky is sinking in his heart. Master Elder God, I petition to hang them immediately or wait for them to return once they return to the virtual universe. And it must be the calamity of our magical universe. One of the 9 team captains, Sushi Supreme, stepped out and said with a deep voice, Yes, we can't let them go back. This is a rare opportunity to obliterate them. Once they wait for them to escape and stay back until the day when they come back, it will be the time when our divine universe is truly in danger. The gourd fairy wine lunatic also said with a cold expression, It's late. The Zhou shook his head when he heard the words and sighed lightly. List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 45, 59. He seems to be confirming the word of the universe. When the divine universe was eager to try, when it was about to gather all its powers to completely kill the virtual deities of the virtual universe, the virtual gods looked back and looked at the 30 virtual deities that were already in various shades of weakness. Lung Hua said, "Let's go." After finishing speaking, Su Shun's big sleeve rolled a roll, and the 36 marked virtual honors and hundreds of ordinary virtual honors were put into the sleeves, and then he stepped into the void crack. The imaginary universe came with an invincible posture, but ended with a wolf howl. However, none of the people in the divine universe have a sense of joy on their faces. This time the two universes faced each other. It seemed that the divine universe had won and ended with the defeat of the virtual universe. This is not the case. Although this time of the battle, the virtual universe has fallen a few virtual honors, but it is not a matter of injury. You must know that the Divine Force universe has deployed various means for this battle, such as those hundreds of killing arrays, and for example, the 99 Fomtian flags arranged by Jian Wushuang in the void. They are planning to make a big injury to the imaginary universe and even wipe it out. However, the reality is quite different from what they expected. Opportunity is fleeting, and this opportunity has passed for the divine universe. I do need to think about it. The next time the virtual universe makes a comeback again, when the offense comes, it must have been fully prepared. At that time, it will be the calamity of the magical universe. This day, obviously, it will not take long. Abominable. One invincible supreme. The void in front of him blasted a punch, and suddenly the void broke like a mirror, venting the depression in his heart. Other invincible supremes, although they do express their inner depression like this person, they all have a somber face, and their faces are not very good-looking. Qi Jian Wushuang slammed the Tai Luo divine sword into a scabbard. If you do intervene, then everything they expected may have been achieved. With at least Sword Wushuang can be sure the ordinary vanity of the virtual universe will definitely be wiped out by the army, and no one will escape. And Shushan did not have the lock of space at that time provided by Devouring Organization, nor could it open the connection channel between the two universes. At least half of those 6 marked virtual lords were to be folded here. It's just a pity that countless calculations haven't been taken into account. This is a tumor. Okay, let's go back and prepare. Wu Zhou took a deep breath and said with a deep voice, "He is the leader of the divine universe. Although he is a bit downcast about this battle, he knows that he cannot show it. Once he showed sorrow, the divine universe was really over. The divine power universe now seems tough, but in fact, all the rope is tied to the of the universe. It is good." Everyone nodded, followed behind the of the universe, and ran toward the base camp. The battlefield outside of the territory became quiet once again, leaving only a pile of stumps and broken arms and countless divine power fluctuations, confirming the brutal battle just now. But over time, these traces of warfare will be silently devoured by the universe and repeated at the beginning. The universe never changes. It is like a ruthless and constantly running machine, watching the times changing silently, ebb and flow. Even if the people of the virtual universe come in, only the monks who live in the divine universe will disappear, not the divine universe. Back to base camp. I was responsible for some of the supreme garrisons in the camp. When I saw everyone, they looked serious and silent, and knew in their hearts that this battle was definitely not a good result. Therefore, they didn't ask anything, but they whispered a master of the god and stopped talking. "Okay." Wu Zhou nodded to them, and then said, "Come to the hall and discuss the next plan." There was a hint of exhaustion in his voice. After I finished speaking, the of the universe stopped talking and walked towards the hall step by step alone. At this time, many people found out. Wu Zhoushan didn't know when the straight waist that had been quite straight had already been stunned a little, and the back looked thin and lonely. Seeing this, everyone could not help but glance at each other, then sighed. The pressure of the gods of the universe is the biggest of them. He bears too much. Let's go. The grandpa ancestor took a deep breath and then strode behind the Zhou and headed towards the hall. I entered the hall, and everyone arched, "Ill wait. See Lord Elder God." This time, I won't talk about these red tapes. Wu Zhou God waved his hand, and there was a touch of exhaustion in his eyes. After I finished speaking, the of the universe did not speak anymore, but looked towards the hall. Some positions have been vacated. One of the more advanced is the position of the leader of the 5th Team Zero Supreme. Empty there. The position is still there, but people can never come back. Zero, Wood Supreme, died in the hands of the first ancestor of the heavenly sacred place of the virtual universe. The 4th team captain, Jin Yen, said softly, "Among the 9 team captains, he has the best relationship with Supreme Zero." The two were in the same era, but they were the two great arrogances of that era. Later, they entered the extraterritorial battlefield and fought side by side. It can be said that they are already the closest relatives in the world. Okay. Wu Zhoushan nodded his head and said, "Xiaolan, you will go to the heroes list later and engrave the name of Zero with Supreme." "Yes, master." Lan Lan replied softly. Although she is a disciple of Zhou God and has a high status, she also joined the battle. At the moment, she has a pale face, a weak breath, and suffered a minor injury in the battlefield. Did not let the negative sadness come out. God took a deep breath, forcibly lifted his spirit, regained his sharpness, swept from the faces of everyone, and said, "What are you waiting for next?" As soon as this remark was made, everyone looked at each other, and no one spoke. I have exhausted all the means to be used. At this level of war, ordinary conspiracy and trickery will no longer have any effect. Until a long time passed, the Pi ancestor, the white ape, just stood up from his seat with a clear tone. Without him, soldiers come to cover the water and cover the earth, but death battle, dead war. After hearing the words, God of the Gods narrowed his eyes and then nodded, revealing endless killings and determination. Yes, only war. Many others supremely heard the words. The eyes suddenly soared. It is true that at this time, all conspiracy and scheming to conquer the virtual universe are just jokes. They have only one way to go, and that is death fighting. I agree. Wu Xin spit out these 2 words coldly. Seconded. 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 Chapter 4560. For a moment, the entire hall of the cosmic god was filled with the voice of secondary advice, and the words of death battle rushed to Xiaohan, breaking Kyushu. Wu Zhou God took a deep breath and looked at the supreme mansion. His head nodded slightly. As long as morale is still there, so many obstacles, just wait. Break through your power and stay with you to the end. An invincible supreme, his eyes filled with warfare, he said, "Yes, you can fight if you want, you can die at most." "My monk, why not fight? When the Yin and Yang rebellion stain the sky with my blood." The other invincible supremacy also spoke. He who can cultivate to this state, which is not the dragon and the phoenix among the people, the arbitrary existence, Sun's life and death have long been taken down by them. When they entered this extraterrestrial battlefield, their lives and deaths were ignored. Only the 3 dragon and phoenix and unicorn families, without a word, faced the eyes of the gods of the universe. In this regard, the of the universe can only pretend to turn a blind eye. Okay, everyone, then you can go back and prepare for 1 or 2 and wait for the war to begin. The bright light flickered in the eyes of the phantom god, and the deep voice opened. The people in this fictional universe are not injured, but the same is true of the divine power universe. You must pay close attention to time to keep yourself in a peak perfect state. Yes, everyone dispersed, and the hall was quiet again. Yanzhou God's straight waistplate was loosened, and he sighed softly, no longer covering the tiredness between the eyebrows. With 100,000 perseverance in chaos, he is too tired and tired. He rubbed his eyebrows, and Lanzhao said to the side of Lan Lan, Xiaolan, go to the depths of the universe for your teacher, and you will summon all invincible supremes in the depths of the universe to the extraterritorial battlefield. It is good. Tong Lanlan didn't have any delay. After nodding his head, he walked out of the hall, released the cosmic boat, and blasted towards the depths of the universe. After Lanlan left, there were only two gods in the whole hall, the of the sky and Lan Su. Tong Lansu did not participate in the God War, but stayed at the base camp to control the overall situation for the gods of the universe. Master, if you transfer all the invincible supreme here, I am afraid that there is no invincible supreme suppression in the depths of the universe. There will inevitably be people who have the opportunity to take advantage of cholera, Tong Lansu said, with some concern. Wu Zhoushan frowned and glanced at Lan Su and said, It's a very good way to do things in extraordinary times. It's time now. If this battle cannot be defended, the entire divine universe will be destroyed for this purpose. Where else can there be so much fear? After a long pause, the Zhou continued to say, If anyone dares to make trouble at this time, if our battle is defeated, naturally we will not mention it again. If we win, the old man will go to the autumn to settle accounts. Yes, the disciples understand. Lan Su nodded a little back. Well, you can go down too, and let the teacher be alone. After the god waved his hand to let Lan Su back down, he first glanced down at the broken cuff of his right hand, then looked up at the sky. His eyes seemed to penetrate the roof of the hall, and looked at the starry sky of Wudi, sighed softly, breathed. The most serious thing happened to him because he was unable to suppress the virtual because of his battle with the virtual god. You have to get others up quickly. He converged his thoughts, and there was a flash of enlightenment in the eyes of Zhou God. At the same time, deep in the sky, a black, giant tortoise the size of a star field constantly shuttled. Some star thieves robbed while on fire, and monks crossing the road. When they saw this giant tortoise, they were shocked and shocked in their eyes. They hurried away from it and did not dare to block the road. Here, is this special lady a turtle? This is bigger than a planet. Walk around, there must be some old monster out. These monks and star thieves marveled. On the turtle's back, no one heard it. A girl was constantly screaming with excitement. Wow, wow, Master, is this the depths of the universe? This is too beautiful. Wow, oh, this girl is not someone else. Naturally, it is the naive who once had a relationship with Jian Wushuang in Nanshu and Xiandao. At this time, she followed the ancestor of Feng Tian to tour the entire universe, and finally reached the depths of the universe, which is also the most prosperous area of the universe. Wu Jiuji looked at the countless galaxies circling, countless galaxies swaying, and countless universes of shuttles in the universe. Her eyes glowed. Previously, in Nanshu and Xiandao, the starry sky she saw was only so big, and she thought that the starry sky was really so big. Until then, she discovered that the original cosmic starry sky was so bright and so gorgeous, the beauty she had never imagined. Calm. Boy, you calm down for your teacher. When the baby was yelling for a while, her head suddenly ate a brain collapse. She couldn't help covering her head and grinning. Master, why are you hitting me? Wu Chuji opened her bright eyes and looked at Feng Tian's ancestor with a look of grievance. Don't give this teacher a wrong set. Wu Fengshen's ancestor glared at the naive with a beard and immediately said disgustedly, Anyway, as a teacher, I am also a big man with a head and a face in the universe. Your entire face has never seen the world, making it awkward for the teacher. Oh, chin cheese. A word sounded a long tone, and it seemed that the meaning of the O word was a little dazed. Master, no one greeted you along the way. Respectfully, the young child murmured softly. What did you say? Feng Tian's ancestors heard the words, and they suddenly felt that they were out of breath and snorted coldly. When I dominated the universe as a teacher, the depths of the universe were still chaotic. These little guys didn't know as teachers. It's normal. Wu Chuji heard the words and could not help but spit out his tongue. Well, I'm too lazy to tell you this. After a long pause, Feng Tian's ancestors' expression gradually became solemn, and Shun Sheng said, You son, am leaving for the teacher. Go. After hearing the words for a while, Chu Chuji immediately excited her eyes and smiled and nodded. Okay, when are we going? The old ancestor of Feng Feng took a deep breath and shook his head and said, You son, not us, but me, leave alone. Go away. Wu Chuji heard the words froze, and her face looked confused. Since she was still in, she followed her ancestor Feng Tian unceasingly. She never thought that one day her master would leave her. I don't know why. Suddenly, she seemed to be drained from the whole body. Her feet were light and heavy as if stepping on a cloud, and as if a big stone was blocked on her chest. Her breathing stopped. Chapter 45, 61. The atmosphere was so deep that it fell into unprecedented silence. After a long time, the infantile forced a smile on his face and asked, Master, where are you going? Feng Fengshen's ancestor noticed the look on the naive face and could not help showing a hint of intolerance in his eyes. If he could, why would he want to leave the naive? I am so stupid, so simple and innocent. Who will protect her if she is gone? I must be cheated, right? In the long years, the old and the young had already become dependent on each other, becoming a bond that could not be separated from each other. However, the next moment, Feng Tian's ancestors' eyes could not bear it, and he was resolutely replaced. He turned his head, no longer looked at the naive, looked at the distant extraterrestrial battlefield, calmed his tone as much as possible, and said, Go to a place where the teacher should go. Wu Chuji was silent again, and she knew that she was definitely going to make up for her regrets. In the last battle of the catastrophe, the master did not participate, and the entire universe was filled with corpses. Although the ancestor of Feng Tian rarely said these things, the naive knew that the master did not take action on himself and helped the universe. Pregnant. But now, the battle of catastrophes has once again begun. It is time for the master and his elderly to complete the mission. It is good. Hinch's face extruded a bright smile. Her eyes laughed into a crescent shape. Master, go early and return early. The young child is still waiting for you to accompany me to continue traveling the universe together. Ha! That's hope for the teacher. The next time you see Xiao Chu, you have found the person who is really willing to accompany you to travel the stars and the sea, not the bad old man for the teacher. He stretched out his hand and rubbed his childish hair, drowned, and Feng Tian's ancestor was relieved. Fortunately, my apprentice is not completely unable to accept his departure, and his emotions are still stable. In this way, he can rest assured. However, he forgot that the naive was always a very sensible girl. Yue, that's gone for the teacher. Next time I see you as a teacher, if you don't make progress, you can punish you as a teacher. Shi Fengshen's ancestor said with a smile and immediately hesitated. After leaving an inductive mark on the naive, he stepped into a laser and shuttled away. I saw him leap hundreds of millions of miles away across countless galaxy stars. The speed was extremely fast, and in a short time, he disappeared into the depths of the universe. Wu Chu looked at Feng Tian's ancestor childishly, and there was a dim look in his eyes. Extraterrestrial battlefield, base camp. The Supreme Masters have retired in a state of recuperation, and the entire battlefield outside the territory is quiet. However, everyone knows that this is just a sign of the coming storm. What about the Temple of God? Wu Zhouxin sits on the main seat and presses his brows. He hasn't stopped for a while these days, and continuously refines the magical medicine of the treasure, hoping that he can help these supreme universes of the divine power. Master, this is the 9 tea tree teas that the disciples picked on the Jilung Mountain in Mingyang Xingyu some time ago. You can rest assured, you try. Tong Lansu held the ceramic glazed teacup in both hands and came over and said respectfully, a hint of tea scented with heat rising from the teacup. However, it was surprising that after the heat rose, it didn't dissipate, but turned into a little unicorn. This Jiuxian tea tree is guarded by the Tianji tribe in Jilongshan. You can get this tea from them, and you have a heart. Wu Zhouxin smiled slightly, took a sip of tea from the teacup, and said with relief, Master respects. This is all a disciple's business. Lansu answered with a smile. Taking a sip of tea, the stomach felt that his mood was better. Seeing this, Tong Lansu moved his mind and tentatively asked, Master, how much do you think we can win this battle? After hearing this for a long time, the god of phonology thought back. I'm afraid it's less than 30%. Is that so? Lansu nodded. A flash of thoughtfulness flashed in his eyes, and then whispered again in a tentative tone, Master, you have guarded 100,000 chaos times here. If the divine universe is really broken, do you still plan to bury the divine universe? As soon as this word came to an end, the atmosphere suddenly became strangely quiet. Wu Zhouxin put down the teacup. The smile on his face gradually converged and looked at Lansu expressionlessly and slowly said, What do you mean by saying this? Wu Lansu heard the words, could not help but tremble. Master, He opened his mouth several times and stopped talking, but in the end, he seemed to think of something. He bit his teeth and raised his head to look at the of the sky. Shin said, Master, except for the virtual god, the snake is not weak. There seems to be support from the phagocyte behind the disciples, and the disciples bravely said that the magical universe has not had much vitality. Instead of burying the divine universe, Master, you might as well discuss with the Xian Shen Hao Sheng whether you can rule the star in the divine universe. With your strength, as long as you talk to the Xian Shen Hao Sheng, I think the Xian Shen is definitely not brainless generation, definitely glad to be with you. Jack. He did not wait for Lansu to finish speaking, and the Zhou had slapped it out, slamming it on Lansu's face fiercely. Lansu, are you asking the Master to disregard the billions of souls of the entire divine universe? And for the sake of personal life and death, do you give up the divine universe? Slap this slap down, and slam Lansu directly and fly out, smashing a big pit on the ground. Disciple. Lansu stood up, knelt down on the ground, nodding continuously, and the forehead shuddered on the floor. The disciples dare not. When I heard this, the face of God of the God was still ugly, and he shouted harshly, Get out of the teacher. If you are telling the teacher to hear your outrageous remarks, stop blameful for the teacher, and not talk about the apprenticeship, and end your life. He didn't notice. Lansu, who buried her face deeply in the ground, heard the remarks, and then there was a spite of resentment on his face. Disciple knows wrong. Tong Lansu squeezed the sentence out of her teeth. Hurry up. Wu Zhou God shouted again. Yes. Qi Lansu stood up and respectfully retreated. He just didn't notice that his gaze stayed on the teacup next to the of the sky for a moment, and a pang of pain and joy appeared on his face. Master, the disciples do not want to be buried with the divine universe. Since you want to go alone, you can't tell right from wrong. Then don't blame the disciples first. in his heart silently to himself. Lan Su strode away from the temple hall of the gods. In the great hall, there is only one of the universe. He kept breathing and exhaling, adjusting his emotions, but his face was still iron and blue, and his anger was still unsolved. In addition to his anger, he is more distressed because he didn't expect that the big disciple with his own hands would say such a rebellious thing. Chapter 4562, Extraterrestrial Battlefield, Base Camp. The seventh team inside a palace. Jian Wu sat on a futon cross-legged. His eyes closed slightly, his brows frowned. The war between the magical universe and the virtual universe has reached the most critical stage. It is almost expected that when the virtual universe makes a comeback again, it will be a thunderstrike, and it will be necessary to separate life and death from the magical universe. Come. And the response plan of the divine universe has already been decided early. Without him, nothing but death. Therefore, in theory, Jian Wushuang should not have any other thoughts, just quietly improve his strength and wait for the two universes to fight again. However, these days, Jian Wushuang always felt a little uneasy. As for the reason, he knew well. That's because when he was practicing Shinzong, Ban Shan told him the word undercover. Divine power universe. There is undercover. And this undercover is lurking in the base camp. Jian Wushuang thought that with the outbreak of this war, this lurker hidden in the high level of the magical universe should also be exposed, but the first war has ended, and the lurker has not revealed anything. The sound of horses. This could not help sinking Jian Wushuang's heart a little. This lurker, I'm afraid the plot is very big. Chaos. Shake his head. Jian Wushuang no longer think about it, and began to promote cultivation. Over time, one after another, Invincible Supreme rushed to the extraterritorial battlefield. These ancestor-level figures of the top powers were originally in deep sleep, but for this battle, they awakened from their dormancy and came to this extraterritorial battlefield in spite of the decline of heaven and man. They were the last cards and backgrounds of the divine universe, but at this moment they are in full swing. It can be said that for this battle, the divine universe has been, at all costs. With the arrival of these invincible supremacy, the slightly depressed and depressed combat atmosphere actually improved a lot, and even some people began to feel that the magical powers of the universe might be without war. With the arrival of Feng Tian's ancestors, the entire extraterrestrial battlefield finally boiled. Feng Tian, the ancestor, that same level of existence as the Lord God of the age. Unexpectedly, Feng Tian's ancestors finally came to life after 100,000 chaotic periods. The ancestor of Feng Tian was able to surrender the existence of Zulong at that time. I don't know why the basalt of Fengshen's ancestor did not appear. Feng Tian's ancestors are here. Why worry about this battle? This defeats me. Countless people know that Fengshen's ancestors are invincible and supreme, and they all have to smile. Those who didn't know the ancestors of Feng Tian, after hearing these people's narratives, quickly turned cloudy and clear, and they all rejoiced. The battle of the divine universe and the void universe. Why are so many people so heavy, do not have much hope, but fight with death? That is because no one in the virtual universe can deal with it except the virtual God. The zombie has stepped out of that step. Although he hasn't reached the realm of the two gods, they are only half a grade weaker than the gods. This is where the divine power universe suffers most. Because counting the entire universe, no one can check and balance the zombie god. But it's different now. Feng Tian ancestor, here it is. Feng Tian's ancestor. An innate soul born in chaos. If the ancestors of the ancestors, and King Qilin did not die, they would all call their predecessors respectfully. He is the same as the snake god, but only a little luck away from the gods of the earth and the of emptiness. Feng Tian's ancestors are enough to reverse the sky and change the outcome. Senior Feng Tian. Senior Feng Tian. Some invincible supremacy who dominated an era. Say hello to Feng Tian's ancestors. Even the ape ancestor by ape, who has always been taunted and does not look at anyone, stepped forward and smiled slightly. Brother Feng Tian, I haven't seen you for a long time. Feng Tian's ancestor nodded toward the white ape, and then smiled back and said, White ape, it seems that you have to take that step and join us. The patriarchs waved their hands and heard a bitter smile, and replied with a bitter smile, This step seems simple, but in fact it's not easy. Since ancient times, I don't know how many people got stuck at this step. Feng Tian's ancestors did not refute when he heard the words. Indeed, like the former Lord of Life Jing Gugong, but also the Gav Supreme who returned the light and gave a brilliant blow with his life's power, they are all masters who are hard to come by, are stuck on this step. It is even more difficult for him to really take this step and reach the realm of the cosmic God. Brother Feng Tian, would you like to meet the of the universe first? The patriarch's ancestor, White Ape, turned sharply and asked with a smile, Meet him? Hearing the name of the Zhou, the original ancestor Feng Tian still smiled and looked kind, and immediately turned up, and with a beard and stared, See what this old man is doing? Walk around, don't mention it to me. The patriarch ancestors heard the words and couldn't help touching his nose. Unexpectedly, after all these years, Feng Tian's ancestors were still upset about the matter. However, he could understand it, and then smiled and said, Brother Feng Tian, let me go. I will find a place for you to settle down. It is good. Feng Tian's ancestors' face slowed down, and then he smiled and chatted with the patriarch. In the temple god hall, the god knew that Feng Tian's ancestor had arrived, but he refused to meet him. This guy, for so many years, is still stubborn, the child's heart. That being said, the spirit of the God of God was slightly relaxed. The strength of Feng Tian's ancestors is still clear. He is definitely not under the zombie snake in the nearly tens of thousands of chaos period, although he is very likely to be unable to defeat the virtual God, but he is confident that he can trap the virtual God. That's enough. This battle, we may not be defeated. The God of God narrowed his eyes, and there was a hint of war in his eyes. Just 1 month after Feng Tian's ancestor arrived at the extraterrestrial battlefield, the virtual universe has finally made a comeback. This time the virtual universe is out of the nest, bringing together the peak combat power of the entire virtual universe. They are mighty, covering the sky and covering the sun, occupying the entire starry sky. The coercion emitted by them alone is enough to crush the ancient and shake 9 days and 10 places. The first to walk with a negative hand was shrouded in endless black mist, revealing only a pair of scarlet eyes. Behind his half-body, there are 9 snakes with 9 snake heads, with the sun and moon, the greedy wolf-breaking army, and other stars printed on the heart of the snake's head and eyebrow. This giant snake is equally terrifying in strength, and with a swaying figure, it draws a dark channel in the void. This person is like a zombie in the virtual universe. At that time, the willow that wanted to the control of Jian Wushuang's deity was the descendant of the snake god. List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 45:63. Zombie. The virtual universe is like a big man in the sun. Since the battle between the virtual and the of the earth fell into a deep sleep, the zombie has risen, taking over the virtual god, and has become the new hegemon of the virtual universe. If compared with the virtual god, the strength of this zombie is naturally inferior, but this does not mean that he is weak. The strength of the zombie is equivalent to that of Feng Tian's ancestors, and he has taken that step, which is between the realm of the virtual and the 6-marked virtual respect. The reason why he did not reach the real state of the virtual is just a lack of luck, nothing more. Behind the Shushan and zombies, there are two left and right ambassadors. These two are standing in the realm of six-marked virtual respect, the most peak existence. After that, they came out together, with different looks and breaths, but a powerful and unusual six-mark vanity. The third ancestor of Tianyao, the Lord of Refining Gods, and the Lord of the Een Palace. These are the second batch of six-marked virtual respects originally reserved in the virtual universe. At this moment, they were also summoned by the virtual gods and moved in. They stood together, and the breath of them together went straight to Xiaohan, giving people an extremely powerful visual impact. Behind them, there is an attacking army composed of ordinary vanity, and they are also the largest. They fill the entire sky, cover the sky, and are vast and daunting. The most terrifying thing was that in the void, not far from them, there were still vague waves showing 7 figures wearing black robes. That's Bite the Organization. At this moment, they are integrated together. It can be said that this force is enough to destroy the sky, and the sky, rushing to the sky and falling down to the sky, and swaying the 9 Yuwang spring. Horrible to describe. At the same time, base camp in extraterrestrial battlefields. Woo! A sharp alarm sounded suddenly at high altitude. The people who were retreating in their respective palaces opened their eyes at almost the same time. Next moment, the deep voice of the gods of the earth sounded in their minds. The decisive battle begins, and gather quickly. Boom! Suddenly, countless powerful figures rose into the sky. The 7th team belongs to Jian Wushuang's palace. Did it finally start? In the eyes of Jian Wushuang, the mango surged 3 inches, and the whole person was full of sharp breath. Immediately, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and lifted the Taro Excalibur, which was placed aside, inserted into the waist scabbard, and stood up. Let's get started. Huh. When Jian Wu stepped on his feet, he disappeared into the palace. When Jian Wushuang approached the base camp hall, the entire hall was crowded. Seeing Jian Wushuang coming, these ordinary supreme, awe in their eyes, and took the initiative to separate a path for Jian Wushuang to walk. Unconsciously, Jian Wushuang has already conquered the crowd. He is no longer just the first person under the Invincible Supreme, but also the leader of the Divine Power universe. The word leader is so heavy. Sword Wushuang approached step by step, nodding slightly in response to these supremes. Going to the front, some Invincible Supremes looked back at Jian Wushuang, and their eyes also showed appreciation. Little guy, it's been a long time. The patriarch ancestor smiled slightly at Jian Wushuang. Senior Ape. Jian Wushuang also smiled slightly at the patriarch. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's shoulder was patted again, and a loud voice sounded. Ha 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 ha, little chicken, old man sees you again. Jian Wushuang twitched his mouth, turned back, and saw his ancestor Feng Tian smiling at him. Senior Feng Tian. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and arched towards Feng Tian's ancestor. Hey, little guy, I saw you. I forgot to ask you last time. What's your name? Feng Tian's ancestor said with a smile. Huifeng Feng Tian seniors. Junior swords are unparalleled. Jian Wushuang said honestly. Jian Wushuang? Well, the old man with this name is a bit familiar. When traveling around the universe in recent days, I seem to have heard people say that it was the first day of our universe, right? Feng Tian's ancestor looked up and down Jian Wushuang and said with interest, the junior is afraid to be. Jian Wushuang shook his head. Just when Feng Tian's ancestor still wanted to say something, deep inside the hall, a man with white hair appeared step by step. When seeing the of the sky, Feng Tian's ancestor's face suddenly pulled down, and he gave a cold hum from his nose. Don't go over and stop talking. The others, too, whispered, staring at the god of eternity without squinting, and their expressions became serious. Zhou God was expressionless. His eyes slowly swept from the faces of everyone, without saying any nonsense, but simply saying 4 words. "Follow me." "Yes." Everyone in the audience responded, and their voices went straight to Xiao Han, shaking for 9 days. Of course, in addition to Feng Tian ancestors. It's kind of the whole thing, it's just a whistleblower. He grinned slightly. The of the universe did not care about him, and he stepped on the ground, and the whole person suddenly turned into a streamer sweeping away in the direction of the outer battlefield. There was a muffled sound, and everyone followed. Just less than 10,000 miles away from the base camp, the 2 sides of the magical universe and the virtual universe met in the starry sky. The of the halt stopped, and everyone stopped. The men and women on both sides stood facing each other. Although there was no speech, there was already a terrifying warfare, and they were uploaded from the men and women on both sides. Swords flew, and they started. God of God, this time you can't stop it. Su Shin stood with his hands up and spoke lightly. The dark fog surrounding him, like a rushing wave, swelled away, surging and surging. Is it? Zeus is expressionless. Stubbornness. The false shook his head when he saw the situation, and continued to say, Earth God, our dispute is nothing more than a fight for this cosmic luck. If you wish to self-cultivate, no, hang yourself under this starry sky. Promise not to move the plants and trees in your universe. Murderous heart. In this sentence, I immediately wanted to push the of the universe to the opposite side of the divine universe. Fortunately, Zushin's face was unmoved at all. The supreme man behind Zhoshin also had no expression on his face. Those who can become supreme are those with a firm mind. How can they be confused by these 3 words? The of the universe is here, and the universe of gods has the opportunity to turn the Jedi. Once the of heaven falls, the entire universe of gods will be reduced to fish on the chopping board, and let the virtual gods slaughter them. Seeing this, Shushin didn't care, just sighed and waved forward, then let the killing stop it. Boom! Suddenly, led by dozens of 6-marked virtual lords, he led a common black lord with black pressure, rushing from behind the virtual god, passing by the virtual god, sneered at the man, and horse on the side of the divine universe hit it. Fighting broke out. List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 4564. The dark cloud crushes the city, and Jiaguang opens to the golden scales. The entire sky was filled with ordinary vanities, led by these dozens of 6-marked vanities, just like the locusts passing through the air, and the void was directly cracked. Kill! Wu Jiangxian's beautiful eyes were cold, and her voice was cold. The words fell, and Wu Jianxian took the lead in rushing out. She is like the ant who shoots a fairy, with a sword in her hand, enough to cut off all enemies in the world. Little girls, dance swords and get guns. Come here for me. The first ancestor of Tianyao, the heavenly sacred place of the virtual universe, smiled vaguely, then pulled the right hand directly to open up a secret realm, dragged Wu Jianxian into it, and started a duel. I haven't had fun last time. Come back this time. The patriarch's ancestor, White Ape, flashed in his eyes and shook his mind for 9 days. The boiling blood was like a big sun, which made people dare not look straight. He blasted out with a punch, as if he was pushing a golden carriage, struck Gu Tianting's war drum, and blasted towards the right. The waters of the river are in the sky, and the wine lunatic holding the wine gourd and wearing a tattered robe shook his head and sighed. Suddenly, the endless, innate sunflower water poured out from the gourd, as if the Tianhe River was upside down. The Milky Way rolled backwards and rushed towards the left emptiness. In a short while, everyone found their own opponent. Slightly behind the ghost of the half position, 9 heads spit out snakes at the same time, looking at the audience. The next moment, his 9 pairs of eyes fell on Jian Wushuang at the same time. You have the taste of this younger generation. The zombie voice was hoarse and cold. Presumably the little guy who delusions will die in your hands, right? The voice dropped, and the snake head on his far right opened his mouth slightly, condensing countless virtual forces. A terrifying breath spread from the mouth of this snakehead, just when the zombie was going to solve the sword, unparalleled. Suddenly, the snakehead in the center of his head was patted from behind. "Hey, your opponent is me." Immediately, a grinning voice sounded behind him. When did it appear? The zombie eyes narrowed, and he turned around and saw his old ancestor looking at him with a smile. Is that a step out of existence? When did the divine universe exist? The zombie spirit was slightly surprised, but in the information he received, there was no news of the ancestor of Feng Tian. However, only momentarily, he turned back and spit out 2 words. "Interesting." "Is it?" Feng Tian's ancestor grinned, raised his palm again, and patted it towards the head of the zombie. "In this palm, it seems that there are countless great worlds disillusioned, and chaos appears, and the power is extreme. There is even more interesting." Huh. Just as the palm of the chaos was about to be photographed on the head of the zombie god, the huge snake tail of the zombie had blasted out of the void like a giant axe, and it came diagonally towards the ancestor of Feng Tian. Far away, Jian Wushuang took a sigh of relief. Although he is now the first person under the Invincible Supreme, he still has a huge gap in the face of the snake, who has stepped out of the Invincible Supreme from the realm of the cosmic god. Fortunately, the zombie has now been entangled by the ancestors of Feng Tian, and each of the Invincible Supremacy has its own opponent. On this extraterrestrial battlefield, no one can rule him. Kill. Jian Wushuang's expression was indifferent. His eyebrows were cold, and his sword suddenly turned into a dazzling sword, and he rushed towards the mighty army of virtual respect. Behind the sword Wushuang, there are a number of top elites such as King of 9 Calamities, Overlord, Supreme Ram, and King Jinwu. They suddenly formed a sharp knife and fiercely inserted into the army of virtual respect. Suddenly, the flames raged, killing and killing. "God Corpse, come!" And on the side of the virtual universe, the ordinary virtual respect is headed by others, not simply others, but the Moose Wind Elders who refined Shenzong. This time, the emptiness of the universe not only made up for the flaws of the 6-mark veneration, but also the number of ordinary venerations skyrocketed. Just for finding Shenzong, there are 3 5-marked virtual honors of Moose Wind, Dustbone, and Lanyu, and rushed to this battlefield. I saw Elder Moose's right hand waving, and in the void behind him, he suddenly walked out of a tall corpse, wearing armor, holding a long knife, like the of War in Heaven. Elder Moose Foam roared, and immediately struck the tall corpse around and besieged. Cut! Jian Wushuang, one sword split a 3-headed, 6-armed virtuoso into 2 halves, then looked slightly towards the Elder Wind Moose. This could not help but let Jian Wushuang sigh gently. In general, during the period of refining Shenzong, the elders of the Moose Wind left him a good impression. If there was no shelter of the elders of the Moose Wind, I am afraid that the sword is unparalleled. Kill! Sword Wushuang, who was about to collide with Elder Moose, immediately turned the sword peak slightly, passed by next to Elder Moose, and cut to another vanity. Okay. This made Elder Wind's elder can't help but hesitated for a moment. Jian Wushuang's power was strong. He saw in his eyes, and there was some speculation in his heart. Jian Wushuang is certainly one of the most powerful of the magical universe opposite him. In the face of Jian Wushuang, he was not sure. Therefore, when he saw the sword coming and going, he was ready to fight hard. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang passed him by. What's the situation? Elder Moose Wind was a little puzzled, but there was no doubt about him, and he slashed towards the others. Your opponent is me. Just then, a low, Indifferent voice sounded in his ear. He looked slightly and saw an indifferent young man with red hair like blood, covered with black godliness and blood moon in his eyes. This person is impressively the king of the 9 calamities after being enchanted, after entering the devil. The king of 9 calamities not only soared a lot compared with the previous strength, but also became more indifferent in temperament. I miss the kingdom of God. King Jiuzai spoke coldly. On the other side, Jian Wushuang looked at the scene and shook his head slightly. He can make himself not to fight the elders of the Moose Wind. It is already commendable. Naturally, it is impossible to ask others not hostile to the elders of the Moose Wind. Let him kill. Elder Wind Moose, critical. Jian Wushuang said to himself. After the Jijaiwang entered the magic, he broke through the peak of the Supreme. And speaking of strength, he was not too weak. It's just a matter of life and death. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang no longer thought deeply and directly turned into breaking dawn golden light, killing 7 in and 7 out in the army of virtual respect. The war has broken out in the audience, except for the virtual and the cosmic God. Everyone is at war with each other. Certainly, let the gods come and let this battle resolve everything. The of the universe fluttered with white hair and his eyes flashed. However, Xiushin chuckled and played with a tone of tone. Zhou God, the human heart is really a complicated thing. Are you right? Okay. The god of the gods' eyes blinked a little, puzzled inside. However, he didn't think about it too much and operated the divine power. So he planned to start a decisive battle with the virtual god. However, the next moment, the expression of the sky suddenly changed, and his eyes showed an unbelievable color. List of chapters with high-speed text. Chapter 45, 65. How could this be? Xiuzhou breath took a breath. Just now, when he was about to run the divine power, he found out that his whole body was enough to cause the universe to explode, and the chaotic restart of the divine power became extremely slow. It was as if he had countless injustices and grieving spirits biting his body in his body, which reduced his strength by at least half. Su Shun. Wu Zhoushan took a deep breath and looked at Su Shun. His face became heavy for the first time. Although he doesn't know why his body has such a change, he can be sure that all of this must have been done by a virtual god. In this battle, I am afraid of danger. Zhou God, don't look at me like this. This seat is not bothered to use these means to deal with you. Su shrugged, smiling nonchalantly. All this, you blame yourself for your own fault. Even your closest people can't stand your approach and see the general trend. The god of phenology heard the words calm, but his heart sank. Immediately, he seemed to think of something, turned back, and slowly said, "It's you?" Hiding in the void behind the gods of the universe, Lan Su and Lan Lan are standing side by side. Among them, the eyes of the earth fell on Lan Su's body. Master, seeing the gaze of the god of God, Lan Su was afraid in his subconscious heart and stepped back. I don't. Wu Lansu didn't dare to face the stare of the god of the emperor and said in a panic, "Master, what's wrong?" Lan Lan was a stunner and asked a little confused. God did not answer Lan Lan, but took a deep breath, staring straight at Lan Su's dodging eyes. His voice was a little low. "Xiao Su, you have a habit since you were a child. You have eyes when you lie, look around. So don't lie to Master. Come, tell the teacher. Have you been deceived by the false gods and betrayed the divine universe? You can speak up and be brave enough to be a teacher and not blame you." The words fell, and before Lan Su's reply, Su Shin seemed to have heard something funny. He laughed sarcastically. "Ha ha ha, God of God, this seat did not deceive him. It is your disciple who ran to Su the universe came to me, and let this seat give him a drop of my seat of origin." As soon as this remark came to an end, Lan Lan, the of God, did not understand what had happened. I saw Lon Lon startled. She stared at Lon Su with a stunned look. It seemed that she could not believe that Lon Su would do such a thing, and was shocked. "Brother, have you betrayed our magical universe?" Suddenly, the heart of the universe sank completely. Original seeds. The original seed needs to gather thousands of original seeds to fuse one original seed. The power is endless. Once who has planted the original seed, it means that life and death are under the control of others. I am so apprentice, so ruthless. Sister, I do this for the sake of everyone. Tong Lansu seemed to be overwhelmed under the eyes of Zhou God and Lon Lon. He bit his teeth suddenly and stepped forward. He forced himself to look up and stare directly at the sky. "Master, don't blame this on you. If you blame it, blame you for being too paranoid and too stubborn. To this day, why can't you see that our divine power universe is no longer an opponent of the void universe? And the void universe unifies the two universes. It is the trend. Instead of going to the corpse and traversing the wild, costing innocent lives, why not make a wise move and choose to surrender? Master, the disciples said something awkward. Did you organize everyone to resist the virtual universe, not for your position as the of the universe, for your own luck, because you know that once the divine universe chooses to surrender, then you alone it will be difficult to sustain alone, not an opponent of Lord Xianshun. Master, your destiny is destiny. Isn't our destiny destiny? Why do you want everyone to be buried for your own selfish desire? Master, you are too selfish. A series of words, like bangs, spoke from Lan Su's mouth, as if these words, he has been suppressed for a long time, just to burst out at this moment. After saying these words, it seemed that he had drained all the strength of Lan Su. He supported his knees with both hands and gasped slightly, but there was some trembling between his eyebrows. Wu Zhoushan looked at Lan Su. Jine's original seed from the virtual had already taken effect in his body, as if there were countless bugs eating his body. However, this pain in the heart can't bear Lan Su's words. Wu Lance's words were like a knife, which was severely inserted into his heart, and he continued to split. Lan Lan was covering her mouth, looking at Lan Su in disbelief. Is this still my humble and gentle, respectful fellow? At this moment, in Lan Lan's eyes, Lan Su turned into a deformed and distorted devil who chose to eat. Lan Su, after taking a break, took a deep breath and looked back at the sky. His eyes became sincere. Master, Lord Shushan has promised me, as long as you are willing to sacrifice yourself and lose your luck, he is willing to end this battle, and the two universes will be at peace. Master, you can rest assured that your education is graceful and unforgettable. As long as you are willing to do so, the apprentice will surely support you in your old age and be at peace. After he finished speaking, Lan Su looked forward to the God of God with a look of anticipation. And Su Shin heard the words. On the face is more prosperous. His eyes slightly turned, looking at the cosmic God smiled. And smiled. Your disciples are right, God of God, as long as you are willing to do so. How about this one stopping the battlefield immediately? Wu Zhoushan did not answer when he heard the words, but looked at Lan Su with great disappointment and shook his head. Lan Su, you are too naive. Do you think I'm dead? The war will really stop. I tell you, by then, the billions of souls of the entire divine universe will be reduced to the pig slaves of the virtual universe Renren slaughter. It will even cut off the spiritual practice of the entire divine universe. Only then will the real calamity befall. And you really thought you could survive? You can't survive. This time, the god of the emperor directly called Lan Su's name and no longer called him a teacher. What I mean is already clear. Tong Lan Su trembled when she heard the words. Her mouth clenched tightly. No, Lord Shushan promised me he won't do it. However, this time the of the universe did not care about him anymore, but turned abruptly, staring blankly at the Su. A flash of determination flashed in his eyes. Su-shun, you can't win. Oh, really? Su-shun stepped in the void, and the corners of his mouth slowly aroused. It's time now. Is it still stubborn? Wu Zhou God did not answer, but took a deep breath, saying word by word, Ancestral Art, Chaos Revealed. Chapter 45-66. Boom! For a moment, the of Zhou dying with his hands, his white hair and long beard flying. His eyes were extremely sharp. A wave of hurricane suddenly spread from the feet of the god of Zeus, raging against the bull. Soon afterwards, a rumbling muffled from the entire universe. The sky fell, and the ground cracked. The starry sky moves, the sun and the moon change, and the entire sky is boiling. An ancient atmosphere of chaos spread out, covering the whole universe as if to return everything to chaos. Wu Zhou's complexion quickly turned pale, and his body continued to tremble. However, in his eyes, it seemed that two flames started to burn. That's dead spirit. Countless two cosmic men and horses fighting in the blood, feeling this Xion, the horror of chaos from the chaos, are all faced changes, horrified in their hearts, and looked at the of the universe. Qi Jian Wushuang is also in the ranks. When he saw the expressions of the gods of the earth, Shushan and Lan Su Lan, he immediately understood everything. Is Lan Su a ghost? Wu Jianshuang sank in his heart. This is something he never thought of. He had speculations about the candidate of the inner ghost. He had thought about whether it would be the Dragon Clan, wondered whether it would be two virtual god, and even guessed the 9 team captains in the extraterritorial battlefield. He didn't think that this inner ghost would be Lan Su. This caused Jian Wushuang's face to flash a moment of surprise and mistake. This is really unbelievable. Lan Su is a disciple of the universe. In terms of status, this universe is second only to the existence of the universe. What a jerk! Wu Jianshou exhaled a long breath, and at the same time understood that since Lan Su chose to expose his identity at this time, it must be that Lan Su's purpose had been achieved. A piece of void fragmentation formed a terrible void storm, like a tornado, raging in the void, fiercely. The heavens and the earth exploded constantly, everything was collapsing, and even time and space began to trace back to obliterate everything and return to chaos. Reverse the time of yin and yang. What's wrong? How could this be? In a hurry, countless people looked up in shock, even those invincible supremes who stood at the pinnacle of the era. Wu Zhou's God is really too powerful to say that it opens up the world. It is not exaggerated, as if the creation came to the world, and it is necessary to reshape the heavens and the earth. With his own power, he suddenly moved the whole universe. At this moment, time starts to go backwards. In the eyes of Su Sun, the mansion skyrocketed, and his face changed as well. It's impossible. It's impossible. Even if I wait for existence, there may be a glimpse of opening up, but it's impossible for the entire universe to go back and forcefully reverse the rules of the universe order. Sushin, you are right. The old man can't reverse the entire universe, but it is enough to open up the passage of time and space, forcing you and me into a stream of time and space. The mouth corner of Wu Zhoushin slowly opened, revealing a cold smile. Today, it is a mortal situation. However, he can also use his decaying body to make the final contribution to the universe. You're crazy. Susun's face changed. He didn't wait for his shot, and the Zhou had already torn his hands, tearing the void suddenly. The torn void is like a mirror reflecting a corner of chaos. Let's go with my husband. The sacred shouted, his eyes opened sharply, his eyes widened. Get up. The next moment, The corner of the chaos suddenly shot out of the yellow light, sucking the two gods of the gods and virtual gods. There was a flash of anger in the eyes of Su Su, and then he said coldly, "Zhou God, 10,000 years. This operation will trap this seat for at most 10,000 years. After 10,000 years, this seat can return from the chaos of time and space. At that time, this seat will require the entire divine power universe, kill everything, and leave nothing in the grass, and you will die in this chaos." Hori Morris' cruel voice came from the mouth of Shushan. The god of Phenom did not reply, but when he was about to be sucked into the turbulent space-time, his eyes swept across the faces of the divine universe, and he sang loudly, "Remember, as long as my divine universe continues to burn and endure, then my divine universe will one day have a new dawn." After a moment's pause, the god of God looked at Feng Tian's ancestor and said, "Feng Tian, you have fought 100,000 chaos times with your old husband, and remember that you hate your old husband for 100,000 chaos times. The old husband now says sorry to you. You guy?" The old ancestor of Feng Feng clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and exclaimed, "Old man, you give the old man alive. The old man wants you to give me an apology in front of the whole universe." In the final analysis, he and the universe came from the origin and were once the closest friends. If he really remembers hating the of the sky, how could he appear here at this moment? I am afraid that he is already trusted in the virtual universe, and he can't wait for the of the sky to die. At this moment, the vitality of the universe is getting weaker and weaker, and the dissatisfaction of the former is disappearing with it. Wu Zhou God smiled. He could feel that the original seed of the virtual had already struck fiercely in his body. "I can't hold it long. Feng Tian, lead everyone to retreat. Save the fire. They are our hope for the future." Finally, Zhou God glanced at Lan Lan, sighed softly, and glanced deeply at Jian Wushuang. "Sword unparalleled, the old man will send you a great fortune. And you pick up..." Boom! A white halo was slowly squeezed from the heart of Zhou Shun's eyebrow, and then a lasing burst into the body of Jian Wushuang in an instant. After he did all of this, the god of the cosmos no longer hesitated, followed by the of the false, and entered the chaotic chaos. He will use his own life force to suppress the 10,000 years of false gods in the chaos of the universe. Alas, the torn sky is restored to peace. Before he waited for Jian Wushuang to look carefully at the last moment of the god, what was given to him, he saw the 9 big snakes, and the sounds of the 9 heads were simultaneously eating. "The virtual universe, kill with this seat. Roar!" Suddenly, the people in the virtual universe rioted again and killed towards the magical universe. The old ancestor Feng Tian, who stood at the forefront, sank and was preparing to resist. Suddenly, a thick black beam of arms shot out from the void fiercely, which actually penetrated Feng Tian's ancestor's shoulder directly. Soon afterwards, he saw 7 men in black robes lined up, slowly walking out of the void. He walked in the first, a thin mask with a red mask on his face, showing only a thin figure of his right eye. "Eat one. From now on, this war will be officially taken over by our organization." A biting voice was indifferent and spread. Feng Fengshen's ancestor looked up and looked at him. His pupils shrank instantly. His face became severe and dignified for the first time. "You get ready to escape." The heavy voice of Wu Fengshen's ancestor sounded in everyone's mind at the same time. "Tissues, you come out and enjoy it at this time. Isn't it great?" Suddenly, the zombie also changed his face slightly and said, "Don't you understand me?" Glancing at the zombie for a glance. Next moment, as soon as Devouring raised his hand, he slapped it violently towards the 9 heads of the zombie god.